I'm muted. Just realized I'm muted. Okay, let's get started. It's 9 a.m. I know we are still waiting for some members. Um, I know this update have been a little bit challenging update for Cisco. I don't see, oh, there's Satinder. So there we are. And Satinder, hoping we can see
Not
you.
on this committee. I'm just joining as a member.
Okay, that does not
Uh,
match my information, but that is
Satinder,
no.
you are on this committee, my friend. I think you just um
But it could be wrong.
I mean, you don't want to, if you don't want to join, you could you could jump off, but
I was just coming in to listen in, but I can join if you
are
want.
you available to join video?
Yes, I can.
Okay. We'll give you a little bit of a time.
There you go.
There you are. Thank you, Satinder. All right. Just for the sake of time, we are going to get going, but I know I don't see Trevor and I don't see Claudia on the attendees. So, if our wonderful staff could just give them a little bit of a text, and I'm sure they are already doing it, but that would be great. Okay, let's get started, everybody. Sorry for the little bit of a delay in getting started because of this little technical difficulties for everyone's facing. So welcome to the June 12th, 2025 Licensing Committee meeting. My name is Sung Oh, chairperson of the committee. As we begin, I would like to welcome Claudia Mercado as a new member to our committee. Claudia was recently, well, Claudia, I'm sorry for mispronouncing it. I think it's Claudia, but was recently appointed to the board. We are very excited to welcome her as a new member to the board. Welcome, Claudia. I believe this is her first meeting as a member. So I see her name on there now.
Thank
So
you.
she is.
Good morning.
Hi, Claudia.
Hi.
All right. Let's see if we can get your video on to comply with our require. There you are. Welcome, Claudia. We look forward to seeing you in person next week and to get
Yes.
you to meet everyone. We're very excited for you to be appointed to the board, and welcome to the Board of Pharmacy.
I
Always
appreciate that.
lots and lots of work. So thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.
All right. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted. The protection of the public shall be paramount. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised the meeting moderator to allow 3 minutes to each individual providing comment. We will begin with public comments for individuals attending in person in Sacramento, followed by public comments by individuals participating via WebEx. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting. Before we get started, I would like to ask staff moderating the meeting to provide general instructions on the process for providing comment via WebEx. Moderator Ann?
Thank you. This is the moderator. When we do announce public comment is being accepted, you will be able to click on the hand icon. If you're logged in on a computer, you should see the hand icon at the bottom row of your computer screen. If you're logged in on a mobile device, the hands may be behind the 3-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you may press *3. And at this point, that will be the public comment. We will display instructions on screen as well. And we do ask people to comment only once per agenda item. You'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. And I see also Trevor joining as well. So we are 100% today, which is awesome. So I would like to take a roll call to establish a quorum. Trevor Sandler.
Public member present.
Good morning, Trevor. Renee Barker.
Licensee member present.
Good morning, Renee. Jesse Crowley.
Licensee member present.
Good morning, Jesse. Satinder Sandhu.
Licensee member present.
Thank you, Satinder. Claudia Marcano.
A public member present.
Thank you, Claudia. Appreciate you. And then I am here. A quorum has been established. Members, I ask everyone participating today to be respectful of the work before the committee. We encourage participation by members of the public at appropriate times. The committee respectfully requests that when comments are provided, they're done so in a professional manner, consistent with how the committee conducts its business. And before we move to the next agenda item, I would also like to remind members, which is all of us, to please remain visible on camera throughout the open portion of today's meeting. If you need to temporarily turn off your camera due to challenges with internet connectivity, please remember to announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera. Finally, I would like to ask staff to send out a link to all board members when the live stream of the meeting is available. This will ensure members that are interested to have an opportunity to review the meeting prior to the next board meeting, which is just in about 1 short week away from today. Next, moving on to agenda item 2, public comment on items not on the agenda items for future meetings. I'll now ask the moderator to open the line for individuals to provide the opportunity for public comment on items not on the agenda. You're not required to identify yourself, but you may do so. I would like to remind everyone that the committee cannot take action on these items except to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Accordingly, if your comment pertains to an item on today's agenda, please save your comment for the public comment period specific to that agendized item. Members, following review of the public comments for this agenda item, I will ask members to comment on what, if any, items should be placed on a future agenda. As a reminder, this agenda item is not intended to be a discussion, rather an opportunity for members of the committee and members of the public to request consideration of an item for future placement on an agenda, at which time the discussion may occur. Are there any members of the public in Sacramento? I don't see anybody in the room. Can someone confirm? I don't know who's in the room today because Anne is traveling. Anyone in the room? Hello? The room's microphone is muted. Oh, well, we're going to move on to the WebEx, but if someone can just make sure that the room can be unmuted, that would be great. So, Anne, moderator Anne, let's move to open for public comment for WebEx.
Yeah, sorry about
Thank you.
Oh, there he is.
Sung.
Okay. Yes.
Sung,
Hi, Julie.
It's Julie.
There
Hi.
you are.
Sorry, we
Hi.
had a little technical difficulty. There's no one here in Sacramento.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
And this is the moderator. So if anyone logged in by WebEx would like to make a comment on an item that is not already on the agenda or suggest a topic for a future meeting, you can look for the hand icon and click that. Now the hand icon typically is at the bottom of your WebEx screen if you're logged in on a computer. If you're logged in on a mobile device, that might be behind the 3-dot other options. And if you are a call-in user, you may click *3 to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning, and we ask people to speak only once per agenda item. Are there any comments on items not on the agenda or future topics? I do not see any requests for comment. Oops, hang on, we do have one. I see a hand raised from Boris Gitas. I'm going to send your request to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
we're well.
So one of the agenda items that I don't see, I read the agenda yesterday, is the, I guess, timelines for license, the process by which the licensures are granted. And the reason for that is because I've applied for an outsourcing facility license, and it's been quite a long time before I even heard a response for anything. So I just want to bring that up to the committee that it's like approaching on almost 6 months before any kind of communication went back and forth between our company and the board. So I'd like to bring that up as either have timelines somewhere posted or have issues where things can be resolved so that the process can proceed forward. I don't really have anything else to comment there.
Thank you for the comment. All right. Any other comment?
I do not see any further raised hands. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. Anne, do you have anything that you want to add or comment on? Not moderator Anne, but our executive officer Anne.
So just really quickly, applicants are welcome to reach out to myself or Julie directly, and we're happy to research with our coworkers to check on the status of a pending application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne. Okay, members, do we have any comments? Any suggestions for agenda item for the future? The full house today. Okay. Claudia, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to hear what we did to address the public comment in the future meeting to see how we are making ourselves more accessible to applicants and how indeed are we sharing timelines and showing progress on their application. That'd be great.
Thank you, Claudia. Appreciate the comment. Just for historical perspective, we have been sharing the information on our licensing committee meeting materials on the processing times, and we provide those updates routinely, regularly. And also we have the email addresses that our applicants can submit and ask questions on those. But absolutely, we'll continue to monitor and make sure that you are given information onto all those informations as well in the future meetings. Okay, any other member comments? I don't see anyone, so we're gonna move on to agenda item 3, approval of draft minutes of the October 17th, 2024 committee meeting. Members, as we begin our consideration, I will ask members if anyone have any questions or comments on the draft minutes from the that's so long ago, October 17th, 2024 meeting. Found in attachment 1 of the meeting materials. I would also entertain a motion if you believe such action is appropriate. And I just realized that we had to cancel a couple of our meetings earlier this year, so which makes sense. So members, do we have a motion? Anyone have any comments or any corrections for the minutes? Or anyone would like to make a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chandler. Do we have second?
A second.
Thank you, Satinder. Appreciate that. Any other comment, members? I'm not seeing anyone. I am good to go. Okay. With a motion and a second, we're ready for public comment. In Sacramento, I don't see anybody in the room, so we are going to move on. I'm going to assume nobody's in the room, unless I'm being told otherwise for Julie and Corinne in the room. We're ready for WebEx. Anne?
Thank you. This is the moderator. If you'd like to make a comment on the motion or the minutes, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. And if you're on a mobile device, the hand icon might be behind the 3-dot other options. Call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments on the minutes? I do not see any request for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. And all right, we're ready for a vote. Trevor, how do you vote? Sorry, I think you're muted.
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you.
New
Just a lot of
interfaces.
yes, we're all dealing with this new, this is a little like Brave New World. Renee,
Yes.
thank you. Jesse,
Yes.
thank you. Claudia,
Yes.
thank you. Satinder,
Yes.
thank you. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Okay, next is agenda item 4, discussion and consideration of Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1793.8, technicians in hospitals with clinical pharmacy programs, including presentations. I wanted today to be an opportunity for the summer of education for all of our members, and also any opportunity for changes in our regulations to bolster and to make our pharmacy practice more efficient, more dynamic. So as included in the meeting materials, today we'll receive presentations from several health systems describing the roles pharmacy technicians fulfill in their respective hospitals. I am hopeful that these presentations will serve as foundational knowledge as we evaluate the roles of pharmacy technicians in hospitals, consider the board's current regulations, and evaluate if changes may be appropriate to advance patient care. The meeting materials highlight several relevant provisions of pharmacy law, and a brief background is provided, reminding members about the actions the board has undertaken to evaluate the critical role pharmacy technicians play in supporting pharmacists and the changes made to the authorized functions of pharmacy technicians. Following each presentation, I will open up for members to ask questions, followed by public comment, where individuals may comment on the presentation. And I would also like to first welcome Jandri Desai, Dr. Desai, and Evelyn Talbert, inpatient pharmacy technician manager with Stanford Healthcare. Dr. Desai and Evelyn, the floor is yours if you are ready to go. I know we have a lot of presenters, so it's just going to be a little bit, and then of course Cisco updates and everything. So I'm hoping everything is ready to go. I'm hoping the slide can be loaded up. I'm not sure if you're, I think our team is handling the slide. So Evelyn, if you could just make sure your sound is working, as well as Dr. Desai, I would really appreciate it. And the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. O. And thank you to the rest of the board of the pharmacy for inviting us to provide this presentation on the role of technicians here at Stanford Healthcare. I think Evelyn is just working on getting her camera up and running. So in the meanwhile, I'll do a quick intro. Do we need to share slides, or will those be loaded?
This is the moderator, and we do have those loaded. We will be presenting those any minute now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There we go. Thank you. So I'm Jandri Desai. I'm the Executive Director of Pharmacy here at Stanford Healthcare. I oversee our inpatient, ambulatory, investigational drugs, and informatics teams. And I thought, because this presentation is about the role of technicians in our health system, I wanted to invite Evelyn, who's one of the most senior technician managers at our organization, to join me in this presentation. Evelyn, would you like to do a quick intro?
Hi, I'm Evelyn Talbert. I'm the pharmacy technician manager for inpatient pharmacy.
Thank you, Evelyn. So if we can advance to the next slide, we just wanted to start off the presentation by providing some historical context, because I think it's important to look at that as we're approaching the evolving role of the technician. So on the next slide, I think many years ago, I would say, maybe 10, 20 years ago, there were a lot more standalone hospitals and independent or retail chain pharmacies providing care. And that was largely where pharmacists and pharmacy technicians provided their services and interfaced with patients. Therefore, the technician roles were very heavily weighted towards dispensing and distribution of medications. So Evelyn will review sort of the historical context of how technicians were previously contributing to pharmacy services at Stanford Healthcare on the next slide.
Okay, basically technicians' roles were ordering drugs, setting par levels, and maintaining, like restocking the medication shelves. Also, we did a lot of pre-packing and sterile and non-sterile compounding. There was some we had like a cart exchange that we would take a cart up to the nursing unit and exchange. We would fill it in the main pharmacy or satellite pharmacy and then do an exchange cart. And we maintained floor stock and restocked automated dispensing machines once they became more prevalent. Next slide, please. Next slide.
So,
okay, go ahead.
So what we wanted to do is then contrast that with the complexity of our healthcare landscape today and how technicians are better able to contribute, and we're leveraging them in new and innovative ways so that they can really practice at top of their scope as well. So I think automation is familiar to all of us. There have been so many new technologies, and now with the current AI boom, many more on the horizon that are helping us to automate dispensing, preparation, and now administrative functions. Additionally, from a healthcare landscape perspective, there are several financial drivers. Standalone hospitals sort of became or were acquired by larger health systems because of the opportunity to better coordinate care, but also because of the opportunity in the outpatient setting for health systems to generate revenue and generate a constant stream of patients. So there are a lot of now integrated health systems, and there continue to be more coming on the horizon, and less of those standalone hospitals. Additionally, with pharmaceutical costs becoming astronomically high, prior authorization and patient assistance programs are extremely important and critical to ensuring medication access and affordability for our patients, but the workflows are manual and the knowledge is highly specialized, and so technicians are uniquely positioned to provide support in this regard. And then, not lost on the Board of Pharmacy, but there have been increasingly stringent requirements from a compliance standpoint as well. So Title 22 has mandated crash cart checks and clinic inspections. In the last several years, the more stringent USP standards have been implemented. The DEA is also cracking down a little bit more on controlled substance compliance. And many organizations, especially larger organizations, qualify for 340B, our National Drug Discount Program. And in order to maintain compliance with that, there's a lot of opportunity for technicians to contribute. So in the next couple slides, Evelyn will talk about, of course, with a focus on inpatient technician roles, but some of this can actually be broadened beyond just inpatient and is more representative of opportunities across the health system.
Next slide, please. Okay, our current makeup of technicians, we still place orders for medications to come into the hospital, but currently we now have to restock medication and then use the software for DSCSA, which has put another level in the receiving of medications. We still do compounding and non-sterile compounding. We load the automated dispensing cabinets. And then here at Stanford, we also have something called box picker and pill pick. So the medication has to be scanned into each of those systems. And then we use both the box pick and pill pick to pull medication to load our Omnicell machines. We also use Tech Check Tech. We have certified technicians that are able to check medications going into our automated dispensing machines. We also have Kit Check, and we utilize that for a lot of our adverse reaction kits. We use them up in the OR for different OR boxes, and we also use it for our anesthesia dispensing machine. So we have a tray exchange. Whereas before, what the technician would do is take a cart up to the AWS and then would like QS it just by eyeballing it to make sure it's filled. Now we actually have exchange carts, and so the exchange carts will go through the Kit Check system. And it's also checked by a pharmacist, and then the technician in the evening will go up and exchange each cart, and they no longer have to QS everything. So one cart in, and then one tray in, and then one tray out. And then also, once we moved to our newer building, we implemented a chain of custody technicians. It's almost like a combination of a central pharmacy technician and a satellite technician. And so what these technicians do, they're the first contact for the nurse. So they have a lot of connection with the nurse on the floor. So the technician will sign into the floor. We have something called Vote phones. It's like an iPhone. And the technician signs onto the floor so the nurses know what technician to reach out to. And so these technicians, they function, they do the MAR messages, they time drips, they troubleshoot any missing med, and they also deliver medication to the nurses unit, and they clean out like the old discontinued meds. And we have this system that we scan every med that we deliver so we know it did get delivered to the correct location. And then also if they do a rescan in the morning to make sure the medication is there. So if the nurse calls and say, hey, I'm missing this medication, they can literally look and see that that med was scanned in the correct unit and ask the nurse either to check again or themselves will go up and check. Then we also utilize putting in, it's clinical interventions, but we use it to show, say, if there was an expensive med missing, that I went to this unit or I went to the unit the patient was transferred from and found the medication. And then we log that in as a cost savings intervention. And then we also have technicians that do med history. And some of them actually do PAs for patients, and they investigate different benefits if the patient's insurance won't cover it. And if the patient can't pay for the medication themselves, they investigate different either systems that will help the patient pay or find a discount card that will at least give the patient a discount. We have technicians that maintain our automated dispensing machines as well as any of our pharmacy automation. So these technicians, they run reports, they monitor for waste, they also check the PAR levels and adjust PAR levels as needed. And we also have, like I mentioned before, it's called the pill pick, which is a pre-packing machine. They also run that machine, and they're also able to give us different reports out of these machines. So we do have quite a few technicians that work with our analytics and automation team. Next slide, please. Okay, we also have technicians that are our compliant technicians. They do unit inspections, They do it up on unit inspections on the floors, on clinics, and they actually do the pharmacy as well. They provide education for our technicians for compounding. They also do the surveillance and the testing for our compounding technicians. We also have technicians that perform our controlled substance diversion program, and they're very active with the nursing units, reaching out to them when there's discrepancies that are go unresolved for a period of time. And they are also able to run reports, and they work closely with the operations and central pharmacy to run reports and to reach out to nursing, or actually ask that a pharmacy technician and a pharmacist go up to the floor and see if the count is actually right. And then we have our 340B technicians, and then the group that works with our finance team, and they do, they maintain our charge master. We have technicians that work with the contracting portion of our pharmacy, as well as the hospital purchasing department. And we have billing and compliance. Then we have technicians that work on waste billing and submit claims to CMS. And then we have the 340B technicians that do compliance audits. Next slide.
So I know we reviewed quite a bit, tried to provide a really high level overview, but also be encompassing of the various roles our technician partners are playing throughout Stanford's inpatient services, but also more broadly across the health system. And as I mentioned earlier, things are going to change with AI and some of the other emerging automation that's coming forward. And so we really feel like there's a breadth of opportunities for our technicians going forward. And the role of our technicians is going to continue evolving with time, just as it would for our pharmacists. And I definitely foresee that there will be more opportunities to be patient-facing, especially as we continue to sort of take ownership of medication history collection and potentially even on the discharge standpoint. So that's just a quick overview. Thank you for giving us the time to share. And I know we have a few other presentations, so want to be mindful of that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. Desai. Thank you, Evelyn. Appreciate your time. Members, do we have any questions for our presenters from Stanford?
President O, I have one.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair Chandler, and then I'll go to you next, Claudia.
Thanks. One thing that I'm going to be asking all of our presenters today is first, thank you. The importance of pharmacy technicians just cannot be understated to the pharmacy profession. The thing that is continually brought up is the pharmacist to tech ratio. It seems to be a continual question that comes up every legislative session, which inevitably comes to us. And so I just kind of want to leave an open question for you as to, do you believe, what is your opinion on and belief of what an appropriate pharmacist tech ratio is, given that our definition and job description of a pharmacy technician here in California differs so greatly from other states? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that pharmacist to pharmacist technician ratio, and if you believe there's an ideal balance there.
Thank you for the question. I'll invite Evelyn to comment as well, but I can just share my thoughts. I think with all of the advances in automation and technology, and again, the growing role of technicians in the health system, I feel like there is an opportunity to maybe loosen the ratio that we currently have. And again, there may be valid reasons to consider different ratios in different settings, pharmacy settings as well. So that's something to think about as we approach this. But overarchingly, I feel like at Stanford, you know, again, in the health system, we're fairly well situated because we have plenty of technicians and plenty of pharmacists to supervise those technicians. But also, my comment is coming from the standpoint of, well, what does the supervision really look like these days? We have so much barcode scanning, we have tech, we have automation. So it's sort of, to me, the heart of it is, what is the definition of supervision? What are we expecting when we say supervise the technician? And how can that evolve as pharmacy roles continue to evolve? Evelyn, do you have any additional comments?
I don't, but I agree with you. What does supervision look like? And that's the biggest thing.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. And then Claudia?
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Yes, can you tell us, in terms of the healthcare world, where does the Stanford Medical Center stand in terms of how many patients you guys are seeing? So just a comparison of the scope of work you guys do would be great to understand. And then also, you guys mentioned there's automation coming and there's ways to, from what I heard, develop the human side of the technician. Can you speak on how we do that, both to improve the care of the patient, but also to mitigate any potential, potentially any, errors from technology that hasn't been fully developed? Like, where do these people come as a human element?
Absolutely. So in terms of the size and scope of Stanford Healthcare, our inpatient facility, we have about 632 licensed beds. So that's for our inpatient care setting. And we are constantly at capacity, sometimes over and using CDPH Flex to accommodate that additional capacity. But as a health system, we have 6 infusion centers that vary from about 14 chairs to 90 chairs in size. And so our highest volume infusion center sees over 200 patients per day. We also have 3 ambulatory surgery centers, and then we have some 400 or so ambulatory clinics. So I don't know the exact number of patients, but I think that can give you a general context of size. We also, sorry, I didn't mention, but we also do have a hybrid retail and specialty pharmacy as well. In terms of technology and how do we, utilize technicians to oversee our technology and prevent or mitigate errors that may result as new technologies emerge. I think our approach has always been very cautious. We vet the technology significantly, but anytime we launch the technology, we perform audits on the accuracy of the technology. So as Evelyn talked about, the pill picker and box picker, which are essentially pre-packaging machines, even though everything is barcode scanned, even though everything is automated, we still did audits to make sure that what was being dispensed accurately, to make sure that the drug was truly what it should be, that maybe there's not 2 pills in 1 packet, etc. So I think that is, as we have new technologies, I think it's important to continuously run reports or audit the technologies to ensure that we are mitigating the errors. But again, a lot of them will have their own reporting tools that you can leverage for error mitigation. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And I have another quick one. So it sounds to me, since you're both the healthcare provider, so you're the physicians there are prescribing and you're also fulfilling the prescriptions. That's correct? So do you guys,
yeah.
So do you guys do an analysis of what is prescribed and what is actually filled and the gaps in between?
Great question. Are you talking about this more from the outpatient perspective, I assume?
Yeah, just trying to understand, because I believe you did mention that, I'm just trying to understand the challenges of filling the prescriptions. I think you mentioned there's a financial aspect, there's a technical, there's probably a supply. So how do you continuously analyze those gaps in between?
Sure. So in the inpatient setting, we fill every single order that comes through. That is just the requirement. And so, you know, if there's a drug shortage, as an example, and we're unable to fill that medication, we would intervene with the provider to let them know that the medication is unavailable, but recommend an alternative and then fill that alternative. The same goes in some of our ambulatory sites. But I think where the challenges arise are more, so Stanford Healthcare does not have our own, we're not an HMO, we're not an ACO, so we don't have our own insured population. So we accept patients with all different types of insurances at our organization, and each insurance plan has its own coverage requirements and therapies that would either be covered or not covered. So in our infusion centers, in our specialty and retail pharmacy, we receive the prescription, we run the benefits check, and then if it is determined that we are not in network for whoever that patient's payer is, we would do a warm handoff to an external pharmacy who is able to fill that prescription. I don't have the metrics off of the top of my head, but I would say it's not uncommon that we are sending prescriptions outside of our health system purely due to payer preferences. And that's becoming an increasing problem where payers are steering patients away from health systems to their own vertically integrated specialty pharmacies or infusion pharmacies, which is really causing a significant fragmentation in care. But what we try to do here at Stanford is we have, again, technicians who are in a role where they're helping run that benefits verification. They're applying for patient assistance programs to try to get the medications covered for the patient. And if all that fails, then they're doing a warm handoff to an external entity.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just that helps me understand all the dynamic roles that they have to play on a daily basis. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. And then Satinder.
Well, I want to thank you. You're absolutely right. The roles technicians play in that vital role they play, both not just the large healthcare systems, but also outpatient community pharmacies and so on. I 100% agree. And today's world, we couldn't function. Having said that, you mentioned that there's a large amount of consolidation, and there is a fewer standalone hospitals, and increase in automation, and I 100% agree. But as you would agree, bro, that automation varies among different healthcare systems, right? So, as my colleague Trevor asked earlier about the ratio, and I know we have another meeting and we'll be talking about this topic specifically, but I wanted to know if you advocate, considering that all variations of automation systems, that there needs to be a different type of certification or education needed to allow level of expansion of the role the technicians need to be done as we think about regulating this area and expanding roles. Do you think that the technicians have a sufficient certification requirements now, or that needs to be different levels depending on what kind of automation, in your opinion? If you can expand on that.
Sure. I think it would be really challenging to provide an automation certification only because there are so many vendors and so many different technologies that could be used. So I definitely think there's, in that regard, our technicians receive, on-the-job training. When we launch a new technology, the vendor actually comes and educates us on how to use it. We designate super users who become sort of our in-house trainers, and we go from there. But I'd love to hear Evelyn's thoughts, whether you feel there's a role for a different type of certificate program.
When we first went live with Omnicell, they did bring us out. There was a few of us that went out for super user training. And out of that, we had one tech that really rose to the top. And so that tech became like our in-house trainer. But I could say, I'm not sure if Omnicell still provides that level of training, but they did put a lot into our staff when it came to training on how to use Omnicell. And then also when we brought Box Picker on board, like Chandri said, the vendor did do a lot of training. So we had a couple, like 3 or 4 techs over here learning how to use the system, and then they became the trainers. So we do have like super users. And I did fail to mention, we do have like 6, actually now we have 8 supervisors in the inpatient arena. We have one that functions for our med history, but we do have an automation technician supervisor. And so they provide a lot of the training. I don't think PTCB might have like an automation, but it's not going to really train you for each automation that exists today. So I think it's up to the hospital to develop a training for their staff.
I was also thinking along the lines, so thank you for the answer. I was also thinking along the lines of that if we have, let's say, tier, if you have this type of automation, you're then allowed to do these XYZ clinical services that you're not allowed to do, is something of it. That's what I was kind of going at, like it's sort of a tiered system. Level 1, you're allowed to do these services, only dispensing, and then after that you can do further more clinical services that are currently not allowed with their certification. That's kind of what I was
We do have levels of technicians, if that's what you're meaning.
Yes.
But we do not operate that way. We bring the technicians in and we train them. And so we might actually have a level 1 technician that is able to do compounding. And I know some facilities don't do that, but we train them to be able to do that. Because what happens if you say only a level 1 can do this, a level 2 or 3 can do this task? When you have sick calls, you do not have the ability to have people cross cover. So we, all of our technicians have, when they come in within the first year, they have to be able to work in 3 different areas. So that's how we have like cross coverage. And I really, because we thought about that at one time, if you're level 3, you can work here, say in the IV room. But what happens if you don't have any level 3s after 2 of them called out sick, and you do have level 1s in? So, how would you then operate? I found it would be too difficult to do that.
Thank you for that answer. That really helps understand. It seems like you do have a level criteria set up to allow them based on their training. I was seeing if it could be covered in SOP, or it could be a regulation or something where it describes that. So thank you. That helps a lot.
I would just
Thank
add
you,
that I think you hit it on the head. I think it should be SOP, or each organization should be able to determine that, and of course ensure that they're establishing a training and a competency program as we're allowing technicians to do various other tasks. But I think if it is regulated, it sort of ties everyone's hands. And as you mentioned, every organization has different needs. So I think allowing the organization autonomy to do that makes a lot of sense.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee, I'll go to you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was a short slide for the high acuity large hospital that you are. I thought it might be helpful as to clarify. I know that Claudia had asked about the number of beds, but I do think it would be helpful to have and maybe to let people know, the rest of the board know, like how many orders are verified, how many sterile compounding products are made daily. I mean, it's a tremendous number, and I think that speaks to the volume. When you say you fill orders, it's a little. I mean, I'm a health system pharmacist myself, inpatient. So I understand when you have, like just to elaborate a little bit more to really show what type of workload we're talking about, or your box sticker, how many doses come out of that. I think you can track, whatever comes out of Omnicell. Anyway, anything that you might have at your fingertips here, because I think those numbers represent so much work that there's at some point you'd have to have an army shoulder to shoulder working on these things if you don't have the technology, right? So at some point, like you can't manage on the pulling it from the shelf, taking one out, so I think that number would be helpful. And then my next question, it's a little bit off of what Tinder was saying, but I was just going to ask as for the technicians that you have, do any of them get any of the specialized certifications like PTCB has, controlled substance diversion, hazardous drug management, medication history, medication therapy management, point of care testing, I mean, on and on, right? So I'm just wondering, do any of the techs have that? I don't think it's, it may not be required for the role, but I'm just asking if anybody gets that. And if they do you find that that's helpful? Those certificates are often very general, but they still are a good base of knowledge, and then it's going to be site specific. So just kind of those two things I think would be interesting to find out.
Sure.
I can start with the technician certification. We don't require certification to work here, but once you become, say, a level 3 technician, you do have to become PTCB certified, and you also have to hold a specialized certificate. Most of our technicians are PTCB certified. Either they came from the retail setting or we got them from a technician school. So anyone that came from a technician program, they automatically were PTCB certified. So most of them are. I probably only have 2 that I can think of that do not have a PTCB. But we do have quite a few that have the uncontrolled substance diversion, medication management. The other one is sterile compounding. So we do have a few people, because like I said, once you want to become a level 3, you do have to have PTCB as well as a specialized certification. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure if Jandri has the numbers. I'm not sure how many doses we dispense off the top of my head, or unless you've been able to pull up the dashboard or something.
Yeah, I have it. Thanks, Evelyn. Okay. So on average across our health system, we verify around 10,000 orders, over 10,000 orders per day. And how many doses we dispense per day varies, but in the inpatient setting, we dispense about 22,000 doses per day. And in our ambulatory sites, we're dispensing approximately 5,000 doses per day. So it is definitely, Renee, it's a significant lift. I don't have off the top of my head how much of that is compounded products versus non-compounded products, but the volume is high, and certainly we have several licensed IV rooms throughout the organization and all of our infusion centers and in our inpatient setting, and volumes for each one of those are significant.
Yeah, thank you. I just for appreciation of the magnitude of doses that go, you can have, over 600 beds filled, but each of those patients are requiring multiple medications and drips. So, and then, yeah, so I think it just kind of speaks to the support that's needed for patients, right? So anyway, thank you so much. Yeah, you guys do amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, everyone. I just appreciate this very juicy, fruitful discussion. So Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say that I recently had the opportunity to tour your hospital, and it was a true pleasure seeing the firsthand the hard work and dedication of your pharmacy staff. And you guys are just really amazing. As a public agency, the committee provides members of the public the opportunity to comment on each agenda item. This is not intended to be a question and answer period, but rather an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the information discussed. At times, questions are asked. You're under no obligation to respond to questions if they're posed, but we do ask that if a member of the committee requests a response, you're comfortable doing so, that you provide your opinion if you would like. Do we have any members of the public and hearing room? I don't have that visual anymore, so I don't know, but
There's no one in here.
okay, thank you. We're ready for public comment in WebEx. Moderator
you.
Ann?
Certainly, this is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the presentation, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. The hand icon is generally at the bottom row of the WebEx screen if you're logged in on a computer. If you're on a mobile device, it may be behind the 3-dot other options, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments on the presentation? And we do have a raised hand from a couple of people. So just as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. And our first raised hand is from Boris Gites. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi guys, hi again. First of all, thanks for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I don't ever see the side of the business where the medication is actually dispensed to the patients. We manufacture millions of units a year, but never see it being used in practice. However, the one thing that I have found very detrimental to the entirety of the system is the DSCSA chain. So I just have a question, and how cumbersome is it to use the barcodes that are generated for the medication that is dispensed?
And is that the totality of your comment?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And shall I allow time? Certainly.
Just for the sake of, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say I don't have personal knowledge, but I was just speaking with the manager of our supply chain the other day, and he said it has slowed them down quite a bit because we were asking why a certain area couldn't get their delivery as timely as they wanted it. But he said it has really, really slowed them down. But he didn't, specify what it was. It's just being that they have to scan everything that they get in that they receive every day.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Ready to move on to the next moderator, Ann.
Thank you. Our next commenter is Chasney Johnson. And Chasney, I'll send you a request to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning.
Good day, everyone. This is Chasney Johnson, Pharmacy Technician 106559 here in Oceanside. I wanted to thank everyone for going over the pharmacy technician roles that we have. I would like to remind everyone how important it is to hear from a pharmacist when we are getting hired. There is a lot of automation. We do hear from human resources, but I remember when I first got my license, I would hear from a pharmacist just saying that they received my application, and you're not hearing that a lot of the time now. So just remember, even though I know it's things grow, you can have virtual, online and interviews. It would just be nice to have a pharmacist there to go over the role instead of a human resources. That way that the company gets represented better. You see a name badge. It's not someone in a room talking about a job position when they're pharmacy personnel themselves. And I appreciate all the job titles that a pharmacy technician could do. I recently reviewed like the Board of Pharmacy investigation. So it would kind of be nice if you would hear a pharmacy tech opportunity with the Board of Pharmacy. But that's it for me. Thank you, and you guys have a great day.
Thank you for the comment.
And I do not see any further raised hands. Shall I close that public comment period?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator Ann. And thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentations, Dr. Desai and Evelyn. Thank you, guys. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next agenda item. I mean, not agenda item, next presentation. The next presentation is Dr. Rita Shane, Vice President and Chief Pharmacy Officer with Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Dr. Shane, the floor is yours. I know you all are extremely busy, so I just cannot thank you all enough for your time to come to our meeting. So, Dr. Shane, are you ready to go? I see you as one of the attendee. Thank you.
Yeah, I have. Can you hear me? I don't know if and I don't know where my camera is.
We can hear you. We can't see you, but it's okay. I mean,
well, let me just go and see if I can. It says start video. I don't know for whatever.
Click that.
Uh-huh.
And then does it give you a screen where you can like preview yourself? And then click.
It says permission needed. That's strange.
Interesting. Yeah, you do have permission, but at this point, I think as long as we can hear you, that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, apologies.
It just could be, no worries. It could just be your computer settings, which blocks camera usage sometimes. So go ahead, Dr. Shane.
All right. I will. I'm just distracted by the inability to be seen. Anyway, just because it's never as interesting to hear a voice without the communication. But let's get started. So I started at Cedars a very, very long time ago as an intern pharmacist. So way before many of your times, and I was trained by pharmacists and technicians. So I quickly recognized the value technicians bring and how much I learned from them while I was a pharmacy student. So just a little bit of background about us. We're in Los Angeles. We're licensed for 950 beds, and we run over just like every organization these days because of the need for healthcare by so many members of our community who seek us out for care. We have a large number of intensive care unit beds. We have a level 1 trauma center, and we are a stroke center. Our pharmacy services are very decentralized, not only in the acute care setting and the emergency department and operating room, critical care, pediatrics. We do a lot in the transition of care space, have 2 licensed cancer centers that are part of the organization, and we have specialty and retail pharmacy services. So that's by way of background. Next slide, please. So I can speak to the evolution of pharmacy technician roles because I have been here this whole time. And what we've seen, which is consistent with the presentation you heard from Dr. Desai and Evelyn, is the evolution from pharmacy technicians being involved in supporting the central pharmacy operational areas to advances in the areas of automation, as well as more and more direct patient care. And a lot of that is as a result of the support and collaboration with the State Board of Pharmacy. So you can kind of see our history and our evolution here at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. And I'm happy to speak about it because I was involved in all of it. We created one of the first technician career ladders in 1989 because by then I had graduated and become a pharmacist and was in a leadership role. I was actually director back then and recognized that we needed to find a way to retain technicians that were committed to patient care and who wanted to grow within our organization. Because I've always said, you can talk about a department, but at the end of the day, it's each individual that enables a department to deliver safe care to patients. And technicians are the backbone of what we do in not only our organization, but as you heard at Stanford, and any setting in which technicians work. Next slide, please. Good news is some of this has been covered by my Stanford colleagues, so I don't need to go into some of the detail. So when we look at the roles of technicians and pharmacists, we look at the dimensions of pharmacy practice. And so, we go back for many, many years in traditional hospitals. the focus was on the acute care setting, but as you've heard from my colleague, and you will hear from other colleagues speaking after me, we now do a lot of work in the post-acute setting, including in the ambulatory care setting, transitions of care, and in the infusion space. And technicians are a part of all of that. So as we've evolved in terms of pharmacy practice, so has the role of the technician, and the specialties you've heard about have become an integral part of how we are able to operate to support the care of the patient. A number of the roles I'll be talking to you about are not related to direct dispensing or managing of medications. They've actually gone beyond that to support our overall healthcare operations, some of our clinical functions, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But as you can see, when you look at the acute care side of the slide, you see some of the traditional functions. We heard about procurement. We heard about the central medication operations, about the automation, which actually goes across both the acute care and the ambulatory care setting, as well as a number of the other physical areas where patients are seen, as well as opportunities where we need technicians to support care of patients across different settings in the acute care. And as we transition to the outpatient setting, since patients spend most of their life outside of the hospital, we've seen growth in these areas as well, not only with traditional retail settings, but also supporting important functions that are much more patient focused. And then across, I've mentioned automation in business operations, we use technicians, as has been cited by Stanford very significantly, whether it's 340B or helping us with data analytics and these other areas as well. So suffice it to say that we could not operate without technicians, and they really do have a career within health system practice. And I think those of us who've recognized this have tried to leverage their knowledge of drug therapy to enable us to advance not only their roles, but to support the role we played in safe medication use. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about our focus. This actually came up in all the questions towards the end of the last presentation. So much of our ability to leverage text focuses on knowledge, skills, and abilities. And so one of our areas of focus has been ensuring competency in the selection process. The career ladder also is intended to not only advance technicians, but there are increasing requirements, which I'll talk about. And then the advanced roles, which I'll talk about briefly. So when we interview a technician, we actually have the discussion about learning a little bit about how much they know about basic things like trays and generics, what they know about medication safety. We will verbally ask them math questions. I've been involved in interviews previously over many, many years to see how they critically think. Since fundamental math skills are required, we recognize there's obviously advanced skills that we have technology to assist us with, but we want to make sure that at the end of the day, if a technician is going to be helping in the dispensing process, they understand that if a dosage form and the strength is 250 milligrams, but the dose that is prescribed is 500, that they select 2 of those oral capsules. So that's the level of math we're talking about. We're not asking for something advanced. So we'll ask those questions. And then we look at the behavioral attributes, because we need the values, right? We all need those values that are committed to patient care. And then we also have a written competency exam post-hire that, again, has knowledge of medications and math that they need to pass before the end of the probation period. If there's an issue, they have the opportunity to take the exam again, study. We really do want to support technicians in their journey. And then there are area-specific competencies as well. The career ladder, as I mentioned, was developed to support advancement. We have 3 levels. We also have advanced technician roles that are outside of the career ladder. We have the same philosophy on the levels that I heard Evelyn speak to. We don't necessarily hire into a level because of a specialized role. We want people to advance. Everyone starts at entry level 1 once they pass their exam and demonstrate the attributes and values that we believe are important to be an integral part of our team. They can advance. We had been requiring PTCB for level 3. We're actually going to require it for level 2. Most technicians, as was indicated, are coming in with that as entry level, and we think that's important. Kind of creates not all the knowledge, but a level playing field with respect to knowledge and skills. And similarly, our initial roles, as I think I mentioned, were really to support medication use processes. But as we continue to advance, we're seeing more and more patient care related roles and new career pathways, which I'll share with you. I do believe fundamentally, as we think about ratios, advancing tech roles, how do we do this? How do we do this safely? What you'll see when I share the roles we have, some of them are not directly tied into drug therapy management. They're roles that leverage the knowledge of the technician to support other key functions like prior authorization for injectable medications, for example. We know prior auth is a key function in every community-based pharmacy practice, but it's also critical in health system practice given the growing number of medications that are either administered in clinics or infused. So technicians play a key role in that function. In terms of how we manage training, there's area-specific training. There are requirements for advanced training, obviously sterile compounding. We need to make sure the staff have training. And then we believe quality assurance, which oftentimes is observation, is one of the ways to assure that quality of work is being done to support safety. So, and the ratios would not be the same for someone doing prior auth than they would be for someone working in our community practice or specialty pharmacy setting. So next slide, please. So this is the list as of the time I put the slide together of our technician roles. We've had developed these roles literally since 1989 and continue to add to the list, just given one, the support of the state board and enabling us to advance technician roles, and just the knowledge, the needs of our programs. So it's probably very similar to what you heard Dr. Desai and Evelyn presented, but it just shows you how we leverage technicians' drug therapy knowledge to enable us to do things like surveillance, where they're doing a lot of auditing for us, our purchasing, which was back in the 1980s, and some of the other more contemporary roles like medication history and transitions of care. So I think that my philosophy is really, it's about the individual, it's about the individual practitioner. And if we can identify individuals who want to make Cedars-Sinai their career, then we want to support their training and identify those individuals who want to advance in these roles, because it's a win-win situation. And we get an excellent product. Other departments I work with hire project managers for different roles. And I always think if we could find a technician who wants to do roles, they may not be dealing with the medication use process directly, but they are overseeing our pharmacy in an aspect of pharmacy in a very significant way to enable us to meet the needs of the organization and our patients. Next slide. So advances in practice that I had the pleasure of working on. This is what happens when you've been in practice as long as I have. I worked on tech for 13 years with the California State Board of Pharmacy, and we do have a program, as many others have. You heard about it already. We have very stringent requirements. We did the research study demonstrating the technicians were not only safe to do it, but as safe, or not, if not safer than pharmacists. So we do have a very specific set of requirements for this with certification and annual recertification and audits. And both of these are, by the way, cited in the documents you released for this meeting. The medication list for high-risk patients, which is personally dedicated to my father. So again, we've spent a lot of time on this. We're very proud that this is now happening in California, and we're very proud to brag that California is the only state that has this in place. By the way, Texas, I've been working with them. They had a partisan issue and they couldn't get through their legislature because of partisanship, which I don't need to talk about because we can hear about it on the news. That being said, I'm really proud that I had the opportunity to work with legislation and with the board. And this is the areas we wanted to spotlight. Next slide. And just a little bit more about what we do. So our focus is on high-risk patients, including inpatients, largely focusing on Medicare patients. You know, the average Medicare patient's on 15 meds. Not all, but focusing on those. We also, our emergency department felt so strongly that they need technicians to to evaluate geriatric patients, that we actually have an official program that was championed by our chief of the the chairman, the physician who leads the ED. He actually received a grant, and he targeted the funding for technicians to do med histories of geriatric patients. So that just underscores how valuable he thinks the work is. We contact discharged patients to make sure they've gotten their medications, and then if any issues, they get triaged to the pharmacist. So it's a really wonderful way to engage technicians. They also obtain the medication lists upon discharge and upon admission and upon discharge from the skilled nursing facilities, because we know that's where there's the vulnerability of medications being incorrectly discontinued or not continued discharge. And upon admission, we really want to know what they were getting, because that sometimes is the reason they're here. And if we don't have that information, it's very difficult to get a history from a skilled nursing facility patient. So we do believe that this has expanded our pharmacist's ability to really see more patients in transitions of care, obviously freed up both pharmacist and nursing time. Next slide. I thought it would be of value. I didn't know if it was already been covered. I'm going to quickly just give you an overview of what's going on nationally to support technician training and advancement, because I think all of us want to leverage what's available to provide that fundamental education of our nurses, in addition to what we do in our specific practice side. So just a few slides on this, and I'll conclude. Next slide, please. So I don't need to talk about PTCB. So there is a Pharmacy Technician Society established with the support of the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. And these are the different tiers of what is offered by the Pharmacy Technician Society to support career advancement and knowledge, skills, and abilities of technicians. Next slide. Again, this was just to give you kind of an overview. These are like hors d'oeuvres. Some of you may be very familiar with it, but for the benefit of just showing you what is available, these are some of the existing certifications that are offered, and they're enable technicians to have credentials in each of these areas. Obviously, compounding is there. There's one actually in being a technician educator, and then even advancing technicians. So that, I think it's noteworthy that there is work being done in each of these areas. Next slide. And then there are a number of certificates available. I think this was touched on during the Q&A. I'm not going to spend time on it, but they do exist. Next slide. And then this, I think, is pretty remarkable. These are all of the recognized advanced roles by the Pharmacy Technician Society, kind of consistent with what you've heard from myself and Stanford. But it's nice to know that there is now formal recognition of technicians across all of these different areas nationally. And then to my last slide, I want to be mindful of time. I know there's other presenters. So I think we're going to see growing needs and opportunities. I have enjoyed watching the shift to technicians interacting with patients. I think it gives them a lot of satisfaction. We continue to use technicians in these other roles, and I think Stanford did a lovely job discussing that at length. So I'm really thinking about where are we seeing technicians going in the future, how we want technicians to support our patients more directly, with follow-up calls, checking in with them. Not everything can be done with digital technology. A lot will be, but a lot of patients, especially vulnerable patients, need that human touch. And so I see that growing. I think those are going to be important roles for pharmacists as well. Lot of work in the data analytics space. We find some technicians really want to develop this, or they actually came here with the idea of wanting to do more of this work. So we see more opportunities just to manage the data coming out of all of the automation and technology and auditing. There's a lot there. Medication safety education. We used to have a technician who was a medication safety regulatory tech, and he would do a lot of education around lookalikes, sound-alikes. I think more and more roles are and opportunities exist there. So that's where you start to talk about ratios. Ratios don't make sense in these roles, but they do demonstrate how we can leverage technicians in a very meaningful way to provide important roles in our organizations. I mean, if you were to ask me what was in my crystal ball, I'd like to see Medicaid technicians educate nurses about the fundamentals of medication safety. So many nurses have been out for less than 3 to 5 years. Look-alike, sound-like drugs, labeling lines. I mean, we could go on, and I don't want to take up time. And then post-acute follow-up with patients. You know, I have said this for many, many years. We take our cars in to get an oil change every, you know, quarterly. We need to check in with patients quarterly. And sometimes that could be a technician just to say, are you getting your medications? Have you had any issues? That would be a prompt to then have that patient, the high-risk patient, have a touch point with the pharmacist, and maybe need a referral back to their physician. Anyway, thank you for your attention and letting me share a little bit about us, a little bit about my thoughts, and having been here for the history of this, I'm in my organization. I'm really happy to say I really believe technicians are the backbone of what we do.
Thank you, Dr. Shane. As always, I really appreciate your time and your presentation. I see Jessie has her hand raised, so I'll go to you first, Jessie.
Thank you, President O, and thank you, Dr. Shane. Always learn so much for you whenever you speak, but I just kind of wanted to get your perspective. You know, from the retail setting, we really struggle to hire technicians, get people who are interested, and you at Cedars have such an extensive process, which I think is fantastic. Even though it starts at entry level, as you said, I'm kind of curious. You know, do you have trouble filling technician roles, being of such high caliber? And if not, what do you think contributes to not having that problem?
We have challenges. I mean, we do screen a lot of technicians before we hire them. I mean, we do have to be selective. And there is a challenge because if we don't have the technicians, we can't function, right? So we have done educational fairs. You know, we would literally have had educational fairs where we interview at the same time. So we bring technicians in and when we've had like a large number of vacancies and it's kind of like mission critical. So we will have an educational fair. We'll bring technicians in and we'll speak to them and we'll let them talk to us. And then we will set up interviews. I mean, really, we'll get a big room. And we, you know, sometimes we get to go to tennis. I personally remember how many times we've done this. I call it like speed dating because basically what we do is those that are interested, we will have a tables and we'll sit and talk to them a little bit about their interest and we'll interview them on the spot. And if they pass the first pass, they go to the second interview. And then if they pass that, then we call them in, let's say a week or two later for the interview. But we basically go through and are able to screen a lot of people in a few hours. And it's a way to like have that personal touch. I mean, these days, unfortunately, we're all on Teams, but at least from the local level in the past, I'd have to check with my team the last time we did it. I found it really rewarding. I remember the first time I thought about this, people thought I were crazy. I said, no, let's invite people in to get to know us and get to know them. And let's see how many actually would be the right fit. Because so much is it's knowledge, skills, abilities, but it's fit, right? It's always fit is right up there. You'd see my hands moving around if you could see me. Anyway, so that's kind of one of our strategies especially when we have an acute shortage and we know we've got to move and get people on board.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessie. Trevor?
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for everything that you have done to make the pharmacy technician role its own standalone, respected role. I think that's incredibly important. One thing, so I've first question and the second question I'm kind of asking everyone is the incredible amount of advancement that we now have within the pharmacy technician community. You know, I'm a public member, and so for members of the public who may say, okay, well, when does it make sense for a pharmacy technician to move to become a pharmacist? Or at what point do the advancements of being a pharmacist technician actually kind of I don't know if this is the correct word, but infringe on, you know, the responsibilities of a pharmacist. Could you kind of dive into that distinction of with all of this advancement and professional development we're seeing in the pharmacy technician space, do you see us getting approaching kind of that infringement area or kind of vague overlap between the amount of advancement you can get in as a pharmacy technician in the roles and responsibility of a pharmacist?
You know, I really don't, because having technicians in these various roles enable the pharmacists to even advance their roles even more in terms of their, you know, whether it's an area specific role in oncology or critical care, or it's transitions of care, or frankly, community practice as well. I mean, a pharmacist sitting on the phone doing prior auth is not good use of a pharmacist's time. Across the country, there's been a national discussion that technicians actually should have a slightly higher wage to maintain them so they don't leave the profession. You know, having wages and budgets are always a struggle for every one of us, regardless of where we practice, because if the wages go up, the pressure is on, do you have too many people? We can't afford you anymore. That's been my life, my entire professional career. So I'm always like, on the one hand, I would love to be able to say, you know, these advanced technicians, can we, you know, advance their salaries to be analogous to other technical roles, like there are other rad techs or respiratory techs. So it's a very hot topic economically. I think the advancement does not impede pharmacists. If anything, it enhances pharmacists. I mean, we would not be able to do the level of surveillance. I mean, we have a pharmacist overseeing controlled substances surveillance, but having someone review the data that understands the drugs and understands the regulations and the DA requirements is invaluable to us. Obviously, we have to ensure the quality of what they do, but I don't see it. If anything, I think it's going to continue to be essential. I think it's going to evolve with AI, but there are in the course, at least my career, I have seen technicians enable us to do more and enable us to leverage the pharmacists more. So for an example, at a meeting recently, one of our leaders in oncology said, I want pharmacists in all the clinics, because then there'll be the ability for the oncologists to see more patients. And so then we're struggling with, well, we're also trying to make sure patients are faring well after their first chemotherapy, and the pharmacists are calling the patients post-discharge, or they're on a specialty medication that the pharmacist calls every month to see how they're faring. And we're like, could we come up with some additional training? Because oncology patients' meds are always complicated. I mean, I'm not going to get into that with you. You all know, intuitively, you know that. But could we come up with a process, which some folks and have already done in organizations, of have the tech do the call, and then if we need and get a hold of the patient and family, see, does the patient need anything, then bring the pharmacist in. I've now freed up pharmacist time.
Got it. So thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I really appreciate you bringing in the wages and salary aspect, because especially as it relates to the ratios, which we're going to be talking about more in depth later on. You know, there's some criticism of expanding the ratio because it's felt that, oh well, you're diminishing the importance of pharmacists or retail, particularly in the retail space, right? Where instead of hiring the additional pharmacists that's actually needed, the argument is that, well, especially in like retail community pharmacy space, you'll just have one pharmacist who has a higher wage, and then you'll be these retailers will be hiring multiple. If we expand the ratio, we'll just not hire as many pharmacists, and we'll try to do cost savings to do more with less money by hiring pharmacy technicians who have a lower typical salary. And so there's that tension there. So could you kind of speak to your opinion on the ratio and that topic?
Yeah. So, you know, the retail sector, we have an outpatient pharmacy. So we have hired people from the retail sector, and the retail sector is extraordinarily challenging. In fact, there's a lot of burnout and pharmacists leaving the retail sector. I think that if the retail sector had technicians to help support the work, the pharmacists might be able to have more patient interaction, which is really what pharmacists should be doing. And especially, none of us has the resources to interact with every patient. That, you know, I learned that a long time ago. But there are those patients, I'm going to call them high risk, vulnerable. You all know who those patients are. I would say that if there were more technicians, the pharmacists may actually find those roles more fulfilling. They could look at a patient who was just discharged from the hospital and recognize that this patient needs a little more reinforcement on what they've got a bunch of new meds, you know, and a pharmacist knows that these meds need a little bit of additional attention. Well, there's no way to do that now. It's because of the nature of how it was built. And what I say to my own team is anything that was built decades ago is no longer is obsolete. And I can say that because I built the program here, but I really feel the same is true for community. That touch point with the pharmacist is so essential, especially with the complexity of medications. I think we'd retain people in the community practice setting if they had more techs. And we might be able to actually find patients having a better experience in the community setting, and it would actually help the bottom line. So I think there's some things to be said for the value of what the pharmacist brings to the community practice, especially if it's a corporate-owned practice who is more financially motivated. So just my opinion.
That's what you're here for, so we appreciate you sharing it.
Thank you, Trevor. Claudia, we'll go to you next.
Hi, thank you so much. Just quick follow up on the last comment you made about how you think it will really benefit for there to be more engagement with some of the patients that are being discharged. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about how you envision that happening? You mentioned a phone call, but what are the things that you see that could really help uplift both the patients' ability to really be engaged with the technician, but also just to improve their overall well-being if we give them that additional service?
Well, I think so. We've done post-discharge follow calls predominantly with pharmacists, and this is where I'm thinking we could expand our reach. And we have started in some settings, like as I mentioned, for the skilled nursing facilities, we actually have the technicians get us the post-discharge medication, pre-admission and post-discharge medication administration records. So that's not with the patient; that's for the patient's safety. But there are countless times we find the patient didn't get their med, they didn't pick it up, the copay was too high. We have to figure out how to work with a community pharmacy that is the patient's preference to make it happen. Bringing in copay assistance if they're not a government patient. So there's so many ways the technicians who have knowledge about how what the systems of support are out there to help patients can actually facilitate ensuring patients are getting their meds. I mean, it's one thing to prescribe the meds. It's another thing to make sure that patient's getting them. And then there's also that, follow up to see if they're having any side effects could then be triaged to the pharmacist. There's AI tools being developed for this, and I've had recent debates about this with colleagues. Depending on the patient and the generation of patient or the vulnerability of the patient, you could have a digital, call. How many of us do that with everyday life? And absolutely, I don't particularly like it. I like talking to a human, but a vulnerable patient I believe, again, I'm a very opinionated person, needs that contact, and information that is shared with the technician could then be triaged to the pharmacist. Again, would be done through kind of a checklist training algorithm, but I foresee so many opportunities to really help advance patients, and then they start to know that this pharmacy is more than somewhere they just go to pick up their medications. That's why I went into this profession. So I hope that answered your question. I just think there's so many nuances with patients that we miss because there's no time.
Yeah, and I think you also bring up the fact that critical thinking in this role is still very, very crucial for the performance of the entire health system.
Yeah, but the triaging, technicians can triage with a standard set of questions, and they could be proctored. I mean, I'm a firm believer in observation and proctoring for these sorts of patient interactions to make sure that the information is how the questions are asked. And all those things we all learned about patient-centered communication needs to happen.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And then Satinder.
Thank you, Dr. Fina. That was very informative. I appreciate you coming on and educating us. Appreciate it. I just wanted to confirm in your experience, it looks like what I heard was that throughout, as expansion of duties for technicians in your setting expanded, did you find it that it helped retain and burnout among the workforce, like pharmacists and retention of technicians? And two, can you talk about, like, when we expand ratios, one of the concern comes up is like, what is the proper, is it safe for a technician's, pharmacist to supervise X, Y, Z? And from what I hear, you're seeing that it makes more sense depending on what the task is or the setting is than to create just a just random ratio for a, let's say, a hospital or this setting or that setting. Could you elaborate on that? Those two
Yeah, so
things, safety and retention and burnout?
yeah, I think that I think for the technicians who are, I finally got my camera to work, better late than never. For the technicians that are motivated, and then because of the people they work with, they want to, they have that curiosity, want to grow and learn. I think we absolutely have. I mean, we are blessed, knock on wood, with a lot of long-term techs who came here as entry level and have now advanced into roles where they, oversee different aspects, as you saw in the slides, of the work that they do working with a pharmacist. They're always working with a pharmacist. But the supervision really does vary, to your point, with the role. I mean, if someone's doing sterile compounding, the supervision needs to be a little bit different than someone who is doing data analytics, where it's more of making sure that the individual has the knowledge and skills. It's not even, it's beyond a technician role. I think, so now we're talking about career paths versus the medication use process. And I suppose in the way I would think about it from the standpoint of what should the ratio be, technicians involved directly in the medication use process, whatever aspect of it is, would have a ratio that could vary somewhat depending on the automation that has been implemented, versus technicians in what I would call non-traditional advanced roles that support the practice of pharmacy. So maybe that's where I would draw a line. I also do believe that the ongoing quality assurance, however it's defined, and every organization may have differences, but there might be some, examples that are out there that would be of value to share of, how is QA done? Because quality, we can train, and I can also tell you, I've been in practice long enough to know that sometimes humans drift, and it's not just technicians, it's people drift. And so there needs to be a quality assurance. And one of the things in our transitions of care work that the associate director does is she does periodic, and I don't remember the frequency off the top of my head. They do case reviews of complicated med histories for shared learning. And I think having the dynamic ongoing training quality assurance needs to be the thread that runs through the work that technicians do if they're involved in direct patient care activities or the medication use process. And what that looked like, again, needs to be defined. I heard Stanford has a number of supervisors. It's not going to be one size fits all.
Thank you. Then I'll go to Renee. Thank you, Satinder. Does that address your question, Satinder?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And then I'll go to you, Renee.
Hi, thank you so much, Dr. Shane. You always provide a wealth of information and breadth of practice, and thank you for all you've done to champion, well, so many things, but certainly technician roles. And I wanted to say, this isn't necessarily a question to her, but I did want to make a couple comments. I mean, I also, practice in a large health system, acute care hospital, and we do have a diversity of roles for technicians. And I wanted to just follow up a little bit, like with Jesse's question about struggling to hire. While yes, it can be hard sometimes to find technicians who you want to anticipate being developed into role, not so much into roles, but to take on at least the minimum of like operational responsibilities. So that might be sterile, eventually sterile compounding or providing, doses. I work in a pediatric hospital, so it looks a little different than some of these adult settings. But honestly, a lot of technicians come to us from retail because they want like a diverse experience. They want to learn. Many are interested in sterile compounding, but many are interested in all the opportunities for various technologies. And that's a very common thread in terms of interest. So that's been helpful for us, I think, because they see that there's some growth potential. And then, we also have technician lead roles, technician supervisors, technician managers, and then, and the lead roles are over various technologies. So I think, like it really draws in some people who are interested in seeing their technician career have some more potential. And then I also wanted to sort of address like Trevor's question a little bit about like, is a technician going to somewhat supplant the pharmacist role? And, that would never be, because they do not have the clinical education, to really take those roles. But the technicians working in these roles help pharmacists to, there's this little tagline that a lot of technology uses, or you see it in things about, for the pharmacist to work at the top of their license. And that top is constantly elevating, right? What is the top of your license? And the more that technicians can fulfill, kind of some repetitive or types of functions, but keeping in mind also that all of those are developed, any of those roles or the technology, that is all pharmacists developed initially. Maybe along with, we always have whenever we evaluate technology, we always have a technician who is part of the evaluation. But the development of everything, the training, and eventually maybe having a lead, the super user. There's always a pharmacist as well who has that oversight. And then there are always checks on, audits, quality on these types of things. So while the pharmacists are being able to work at the top of their license, there still will always be some oversight of those, in my experience. And I am sure in these other institutions as well. So it just allows pharmacists to not be operating the different technologies, like a repackager or things like that. So I just wanted to make those couple comments. So anyway, but I thank you, Dr. Shane, and I like your quote about a career path versus med use process, because I think that's really important. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Thanks, Dr. Shane. Always, I really appreciate it. This discussion is so awesome. It's just really, shows how this topic is such an important topic. Dr. Shane, I have to go to public comment really quick for you. So the committee provides members of the public the opportunity to comment. And again, this is not intended to be a question answer, but you're welcome to answer if you would like. And we're ready for public comment in WebEx.
Thank you. This is the moderator. If you'd like to make a comment on the presentation, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. If you are on a mobile device, the hand might be behind your 3-dot other options button. And if you're a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. And we're giving speakers 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. And let's go ahead and get started with Sean. Sean, I'm going to send you a request to unmute, and I'll give you a timer when 10 seconds is up.
Good morning. Dr. Shane, is always a great presentation, and thank you so much for providing with the wealth of the knowledge that you have served. It's really blessing that for each of you and Cedars-Sinai, and having to have this technician developments as well as pharmacy profession. I just went to the NASEM workshop, and one of the focus topic was the workforce development issues in pharmacy, and pharmacy technician is definitely the integral part of the key of pharmacy profession. So what you just have shared with us is definitely the vision that what we should go for. And I think one of the challenges that we see is definitely whether it's health system or community-based, each entity has their own credentialing and privileging, and depends on that, has to be also given the incentives for the pharmacists and as well as technicians to provide career letters or the fulfillment of the professional development. So we also acknowledge that the professional identity is the key to resolve this workforce development. Education is essential. And one thing that we also see the difference between the pharmacist and technician is the opportunity for education. So definitely we'll also work on it as an association, but I really, really appreciate for sharing your knowledge and the experience. This is very hopeful for the future. Thank you.
Can I make one comment?
Sure, go ahead, Dr. Shane.
So one
Thanks for
thing
the comment, Sean.
something we tried a few years ago, and then it was difficult to sustain, and priorities unfortunately take precedence, but we actually developed a technician residency, and we actually published it. And it was, the vision I had was that if we could find motivated technicians who wanted to eventually have advanced roles, they would have a year of training, and we have a curriculum. We sunsetted it. Honestly, we just got too busy with everything else. But I would really encourage our profession to think about something like that, to advance technician roles and have a degree of foundation that technicians would then have across critical areas to be able to support patient care across any practice setting. So, it would be community practice, hospital, sterile, whatever. But we actually did it. I think we had about 3 or 4 residents, and then we just got busy. Life happens. But just wanted to introduce that as a concept. It may not be something that the board would necessarily promulgate regulations about, but for our profession, I think we would be well served to invest in something like that.
Thank you, Dr. Shane. Do we have any other public comment, moderator Ann?
I
don't
do
see
not
anyone.
see any further requests. Shall I close
Thank
the
you.
public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. And Claudia, your hand is raised. I just wanted to make sure that it's just stayed raised. Okay, perfect. Dr. Shane, I hope you stay for our technician ratio discussion, but as always, I really appreciate you for all your wisdom, and I hope you can stay, but I totally understand if you have to go. Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Shane.
Thank you.
Okay, and again, everyone, I really appreciate your flexibility. I know all of you are so busy. So next presentation is from UCSD. So moving to our next presenter, I'd like to welcome Charles. He goes by Chuck, but Charles Daniels, Chief Pharmacy Officer and Associate Dean with UCSD Health, and Dr. Nancy Yan, Associate Chief Pharmacy Officer for Acute Care Pharmacy and at UC San Diego Health. I appreciate both of you, and thank you so much for your flexibility with schedules. This discussion is so juicy, way more discussion than I anticipated, and so it's running a little over. So I appreciate your flexibility. And after your presentation, just for the members of the public and for our members, we'll plan to take a quick break for 15 minutes. So the floor is yours, Dr. Daniels and Dr. Yan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, President O, for the invitation, and thank you, members of the committee. We look forward to the opportunity to shed some additional light into a topic that's been very interesting for me also to hear what my colleagues are doing. I will say, for those people that have not done this before, I've had the challenge of following Rita Shane to the mic more than once in my professional career. It's always an intimidating place to be, but I do want to thank both our colleagues at Stanford as well as at Cedars-Sinai for sharing a big picture. We won't go at UCSD too deep into some of those items, but I will use a couple of those touches so that you can get a feel for where we are at and our pharmacy technician approach on the acute care side here at UC San Diego Health. We are a 3-hospital system. Our hospital is on the, back one. There we go. Thanks. Is on the U.S. News and World Report honor roll of the top 20 hospitals in the country. And I'll point out that we are also one of a minimal number of health systems in the country that are ASHP Center of Excellence, meaning we've gone through a separate level of accreditation by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. We're very proud of that. So our system includes the flagship hospital at the top there in La Jolla, Jacobs Medical Center. Our original hospital, which is at Hillcrest. And most recently, within the last 2 years, we've added a hospital to our system, and that's the lower right hand, and that is our UCSD Health East Campus. Please go to the next slide. So in those sites, we've done a number of things. Before I get into the rest of it, I want to give thanks to what I think is a very enlightened and flexible Board of Pharmacy. This is a list of the Practice Advancement Initiative from the American Society of Health System Pharmacists for their 2030 goals. I'm not going to go through all of them. I will point out that many of these have been initiatives that have been supported in different ways by the board over the last several years. The last one on this list is expand the role of pharmacy technicians. We heard about the advanced practice roles at Cedars-Sinai. We heard about the advanced practice roles at Stanford Health. We also have pharmacists that are involved in many of those same activities. We won't go through them in the interest of time today, but know that the role of the pharmacy technician is growing, and to make the point or affirm the point, pharmacist supervision of technician work looks a lot different when you're not specifically in the pharmacy setting. So we're anxious to incorporate conversations or be involved in conversations about technicians, their work and ratio. Next slide, please. Okay, we are going to talk in the next few minutes, and I'm going to hand the mic to my colleague, Dr. Nancy Yam, in just one moment. These are the areas that we'd like to spend a little bit more detail talking about the way technicians contribute to patient care in our setting here at UC San Diego Health, and that includes the compounding we'll talk more about, managing and maintaining stock and inventory, as well as the automation that goes with it, how patient-specific orders are filled on the inpatient side, and how we involve technicians in the controlled substance distribution and their role in that quality assurance. And so at this point in time, if you'd like to change to the next slide, I will let Nancy Yam, who is the pick for all 3 of our inpatient sites, and let her take it from here. So Nancy, if you will.
Thank you. With Chuck mentioning that, you can imagine how he feels when he follows Rita. You can imagine how I have to feel when I follow him and Rita. Chuck is my current boss, but Rita, I did my PGY2 residency under her. And then I was up at Cedars-Sinai working under Rita for 4 years as well. So it makes me a little nervous. It's like I hear both of their names and I start, it's like Pavlov syndrome. Like I start sweating immediately. But here, thank you for having me here today. And I definitely appreciate everything that's been said and shared already about the technician roles and the growing advancements of the technician role so that our pharmacists can do more with direct patient care and direct patient activities as well. I know that Cedars-Sinai and Stanford, the other speakers, Dr. Desai and Evelyn, they described a lot of what our technicians do. And I feel like I can physically transpose myself at either of those institutions and feel the same environment that I feel at UC San Diego as it is with everything that our technicians are doing and our pharmacists are doing to grow and to advance our practice. One of the roles that, when I think of technicians and what they do that's really critical, the first thing I can think of is really sterile compounding. The reason is that it's so important and vital to patient care in general, and technicians have to do it safely and correctly. They need to understand the differences between hazardous and non-hazardous. USP has even indicated that they could potentially be a designated person or a DP or an assigned trainer training other technicians or training pharmacists in with PET testing under the supervision of a pharmacist. They do quality tests, and we look into quality assurance for the products that they made. And here's a picture of one of our current technicians at one of our sites at Hillcrest Medical Center. And then in addition to the sterile compounding piece of it, we also add in the automation oversight. We have Epic, and we use the dispense prep and check, where we ensure that they have to scan the products before they actually make it. And if things ever come up, then they let the pharmacist know so that we can look into it further. And so next slide, please. The next area that I want to talk about is managing stock. We have technicians who are buyers. We always argue with our procurement, our purchasing department at UC San Diego because of the level and the skill set. We feel like our buyers are more advanced. Like they're buying medications that are more critical to the everyday experiences that our patients are dealing with. Our technicians are just so critical in this area. They help support us to ensure that our stock is adequate, especially in times of drug shortages right now. They'll notice things that are in the system that are red, so that they can say, like, let's say ABC or Cardinal, they only have about 10 left. We should buy it right now. And then we share that information with our other sites. Then they work with our pharmacists to say, what are alternatives that potentially we could come up with so that we can mitigate some of these issues that will definitely occur. I mean, everybody has to deal with drug shortages every single day, right? And so then in addition to that, they're also looking at the automated unit dose system functions. They deliver specific medications to patient care areas. And then of course, we do a lot of automation and technology at UC San Diego. We make sure that it's a scan in, scan out system. Very similar to Stanford, we have a box picker, and we use Pyxis. I think that they mentioned that they use Omnicell. Our technicians don't just handle unit dosed items. Next slide, please. Our technicians don't just use unit dose items, but they also compound and mix and repackage patient-specific orders. They'll get a daily list of items that they need to make patient-specific. That really we shouldn't send in, if a dose is supposed to be 10 milligrams, we want to send the exact dose for that specific medication for that specific patient. So they'll get a list of that. They'll have to pull the medication from our box picker that you can see in this picture right here. They'll have the label with them. They'll have to pull it up. They'll have the pharmacist check. And then all of these things are done under the direct supervision of a pharmacist within the pharmacy department. And then we have technicians who are really integral in the controlled substances arena as well. If you can go to the next slide. They're definitely a constant there. They again use the system to determine the quantities on hand. They identify par levels to identify replacement levels. They also alert us when things may be short as well. They see it first. They're the front lines to the technical aspect of the pharmacy department. I like to think of the pharmacist as the clinical arena, and the oversight of the clinical piece of it. Our technicians are really the technical, the operational side of it, where they're really helping us and they're guiding us to look into all these small details so that our pharmacists can make the larger decisions and look at the big picture at the very end to see what really does need to be done. I know Rita had mentioned that they're also essential to helping to review discrepancies and resolve some of the nursing issues that come up. They help with surveillance auditing. And they'll investigate as to, what had happened before. I mean, we have situations multiple times where potentially a nurse will fix an issue by saying, you know, it's the wrong count, but then they'll look into it. Our technicians will look into it a little bit more and they'll say, no, that's not correct. They'll go up, they'll work with the nurse, and they'll figure out, you know, what the actual rationale for the missing or not missing items are. And so they'll help correct some of these issues. Our technicians are also doing best possible medication histories. The next slide, please. Which is a comprehensive and accurate list of all medications a patient's currently taking, both prescription, non-prescriptions. This can contain nutraceuticals or over-the-counter or herbal medications. It includes medications taken in the past, and then any allergies, especially to the medications that the patients are currently on right now. The key aspects of the best possible medication history is that it's a systemic collection of information, including an interview with the patient potentially, and then calling pharmacies too, to ask, you know, is the patient currently on this? Is this accurate? And then they'll review and validate the findings with our pharmacists. This is really critical so that our pharmacists can do other advanced practice activities during the day, talking to patients, getting clarification. And if our technicians can get a lot of this done, then the pharmacist can go in and check after the fact. And next slide, please. So I know that the next discussion topic is going to be managing tech to pharmacist ratio, and our daily schedule is really planned around the minimum pharmacist staffing numbers. We have a predefined staffing plan as a template, and then our managers and our pick, such as me, will finalize the schedule before posting to ensure that the ratios are being met and then meet the legal requirements as well. I know that all the other speakers have said this before, but healthcare has just gotten so complex, and you know, with new initiatives that come up, it's inevitable that our pharmacy department, our pharmacists, our pharmacy technicians are asked to be involved, because, you know, we kind of bridge that gap, you know, as I've been hearing more about this week, the bridge of the gap between the operational and the clinical pieces of it. And so our complement of roles with pharmacists and technicians will help with all of that. And they know that if they ask a pharmacist, if they ask the pharmacy department to do something, and I'm talking about the institution in general, we'll get it done. And so allowing our pharmacy technicians to do a lot of these things and potentially to expand their role even more in the future, get more certifications to learn and understand how all of this works, will really help with the direct patient care activities that I know the PAI, or the Practice Advancement Initiative in 2030, is really hoping to push us towards. And with that, I'll go to the last slide and we can take questions and comments.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels and Dr. Yam. I really appreciate your time. Members, do we have any questions or comments for Dr. Daniels and Dr. Yam? Claudia?
Hi, thank you. What you just said, Nancy, really struck to me. So you said the technicians are the bridge between the operational and the clinical performance. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, and what the future of health, what that means for the future of health?
Yeah, I think that our technicians are very capable. We have so many technicians who are out there getting masters in analytics, that, you know, that has been mentioned previously. And with the technical piece of it, I have a pharmacy or two pharmacy automation coordinators who can build Tableau reports, and they can help us. I think Renee was mentioning data previously. They help us build Tableau reports, and they can see things, and then they can say, hey, these are some of the recommendations that we see. We're seeing waste upstairs because the patient has been moving from unit to unit, and that medication has been sitting there for, let's say, 30 days or so. We can remove that, bring it back, and centralize it back into the pharmacy so that the next patient can actually get that medication, because it's that next patient's going to be going to a different unit. So they're really the technical component of some of the operations within the pharmacy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Claudia. Any other comments from members? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Daniels and Dr. Yam. I just cannot thank you all enough for your time, and appreciate all you do. And before you go, we do have to open it quickly for public comment. And as I said, public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to comment, but you are under no obligation to respond. So we are ready for public comment in WebEx. Moderator Ann.
Thank you. And we do have one comment pending, but just to let everyone know, if you'd like to make a comment on the presentation, you can click the hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. If you're on a mobile device, that might be behind the three other options. And call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And speakers will have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. And I do see raised hand from Mark Johnston. Mark, I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
Hello there, this is Mark Johnston with CVS Health. I don't have a comment for any one of the particular speakers, but I did want to mention on the topic of tech expanded practice that the newest regulatory change, a trend across America is called the tech delegation model. As opposed to what California and other states have done that list individual tech duties that are allowed, the tech delegation model allows the pharmacist on duty to delegate to a tech any function that they feel like the tech is number one, trained for, number two, experienced, and number three, supervised. Now, along with the tech delegation model comes a list of prohibited acts, not a list of allowable acts. Every state that has such a list, at a minimum, has DOR and counseling, which are obviously pharmacist functions. Some states only have these as a prohibited list. The prohibited list can get longer in the case of a state like Arizona, Iowa, Washington, some other states. I do find it interesting that there are 15 states now across America that allow some sort of technician final verification. Vermont is the most recent state to propose this in their full rule rewrite with very little other oversight besides the delegation model's 3 parameters. But anyway, I urge the board to consider, instead of adding allowable acts, give pharmacists the flexibility to use their professional judgment with the tech that's on duty with them to allow for the delegated task list with the board safety valve of prohibitions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for the comment, Mark.
Thank you. And I do not see any further requests for comment at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, Moderator Ann. And I see Claudia, your hand is raised, so just wanted to make sure that you are good. Okay. And any lasting word for Dr. Daniels and Dr. Yan before we let you go? I think they are okay to go. All right, thank you guys. This is time for a break. It's 11:07. I am being told I think that the presenter need at least, not the presenter, but our staff need at least 20-minute break. So we will come back at 11:30. See you all back.
And to attendee Doug O'Brien, if you have a moment, I'd like to set you up to advance the slides for your presentation. So let me go ahead and give you some privileges. Let's see.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. So you should see a pop-up come up on your computer that says you're being made presenter. And
well, I'm fine with you actually advancing my slides if you'd like to. That's fine.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, never mind then. We're all set.
Now,
Okay.
I want to test my camera because I think I clicked the allow, but I don't. Am I on? Can you see me?
I see that your camera is disabled. Do you have more than one visual device connected?
Here, let's see if I can camera.
Sometimes it'll throw a pop-up asking, can this
Yes,
program? There you
I
are.
think I think that was probably it. Yeah.
Okay. Because we can
Awesome.
see you now. Fantastic.
Great.
And so, yes, we will advance your slides. And so you're all set. So have a good break and we'll see you when we return.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, everyone, it's 11:30, hoping that we are all back. Take a quick roll call. Start with Trevor. I know his
Present.
hand was raised. Okay, thanks, Trevor. Jesse, I'm sorry, Renee.
Present.
Thanks, Renee. Jesse, I think Jesse might be running a little late. Back. She's off the list, right? Okay. Moderator, if you could just keep an eye out for Jessie, so whenever she returns, so please promote back her to the moderator. Claudia?
Absolutely.
Present.
Thank you, Claudia. Satinder?
Present.
Thank you, Satinder. And I am here. Members, as we are returning from the break, and before we proceed to the next agenda item, I'd like to announce that due to time constraints, we are going to postpone discussion on several agenda items, including proposed change to application questions, the result of the workforce survey, and the strategic plan. As a quick reminder, the license and statistics are provided in the meeting materials for informational purposes. All right, and our next presentation, following the next presentation from Dr. Doug O'Brien, a member and public comment, will proceed to our next agenda items. Agenda is discussion on the pharmacy technician ratio in the inpatient setting, after which we'll adjourn the meeting for the today. So sorry for the changes in the agenda items. As you know, we are it's taking a little bit longer than we anticipated, which is great. I love this discussion we've had so far this morning. So thank you for all of your understanding, and I appreciate your patience as we navigate this presentation. All right, and so here we are is Dr. Doug O'Brien. Dr. O'Brien, I really appreciate your flexibility and your patience to provide this presentation. Dr. O'Brien is a Vice President of Acute Care and Infusion Pharmacy Program with Kaiser Permanente Enterprise Pharmacy. Dr. O'Brien, thank you for coming today. The floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Dr. O and board members for inviting us. It's an honor to be asked to present today. And yes, I get to follow all of my distinguished colleagues who did a fantastic job earlier. And I really appreciate everything that they do, not just today, but also taking care of patients every day. So at Stanford, Cedars, and UCSD. We share a lot of the similar concepts that they talked about at Kaiser Permanente. And I'll go over some of that and highlight a few maybe things that I wanted to just highlight in a little more detail. But if we go to the next slide, please. A little bit of our agenda of my slides here. Next slide, please. A little bit about me and about Kaiser Permanente. As you know, we are a very large organization. So we have 37 hospitals in California, have a total of 42 across our program. Around 21 hospitals in Northern California, about 16 hospitals in Southern California. We take care of about 8 million patients in California, about 12.5 million patients across our entire program. And our hospitals range from fairly large, what I would say complex hospitals, where we do things, you know, the usual complex stuff, open heart surgery, et cetera, to actually very small hospitals. In the Central Valley, we have a hospital that probably has a census of 25 patients. That is what I would call just a less complicated, more sort of standard med-surg hospital. So we vary that. On a daily basis across our hospitals in California, our average daily census across all of our hospitals in California is around 6,000 patients a day on average. So really a large number. And some of the numbers are quite staggering. I think across our hospitals, we administer somewhere around 35 million medications a year, verify 50 million orders a year. So it's quite, I also, under my umbrella, have all of our oncology pharmacies too. As you probably know, about 95% of all chemotherapy is given in the outpatient ambulatory care setting versus inside the hospital. So a lot of interesting things about Kaiser, and we continue to grow and build and replace our hospitals. So most recent hospital opened in the San Marcos area in San Diego. We're replacing our hospitals in Sacramento, being downtown Sacramento, what they call the rail yards. We're going to replace our hospital in San Jose, current hospital down there in Santa Teresa. So a little bit about us, just the scope and size of the operations and complexity. So next slide, please. We always start everything out with our Kaiser Permanente mission, because this is a glue that holds everybody that works at Kaiser Permanente together. So I give that to you as our prime directive, as you have yours around public safety, and we'll talk about that as well, because we share that prime directive as well. So next slide, please. I wanted to sum it up in a nutshell for you, because we've had a lot of discussions about this today. But pharmacy technicians are really critical to the operation of our hospitals, and they do many things that have been pointed out, and ours do many of those things as well. The real critical part for us is we want to maximize the use of our pharmacy technicians at the top of their license to do as much of the tasks that they can do, to offload those responsibilities from pharmacists. And so, those tasks are important things that were mentioned, like sterile compounding, also like all the drug distribution activities and all the automation associated with it. And what does that do? Well, our pharmacists have extensive clinical programs inside our hospitals. And the more we can free up their time to focus at the top of their license on clinical programs, the better it is for the patients, the safer it is for the patients, and the better outcomes we get from medication therapy in the hospital. Our pharmacists are managing drug therapy. They're essentially running the antimicrobial stewardship programs in our hospitals, doing patient care rounds, really involved in transitions of care both into the hospital and outside the hospital as patients transition. These are really important things. Pharmacists, in my opinion, are the great unsung hero. The superpower of pharmacists is really twofold in the hospital. One is to be we are responsible for the entire medication management system in the hospital, directly related to keeping patients safe. And we are the ones that oftentimes will catch things that prevent patients from being harmed. And so that is a super important role. And the second superpower is really around outcomes of medication therapy, optimizing outcomes of medication therapy, managing high-risk drug therapy, and making sure that we get the optimal outcome of that therapy for physicians and in partnership with physicians and other healthcare professionals, nurses, et cetera, infection preventionists, et cetera. So in a nutshell, that's it. So we think about that. How do we do that? Well, there's many different ways, but I'll sum it up in general. We like to use technology. So technology does a lot of things for us. Sometimes it makes things more efficient. Sometimes it doesn't make things more efficient, but it may improve safety. And so I really want to harp on that today around technology. And also the other important thing to think about with technology, we want to take the human factors out of the drug distribution process. So if you think about it, are pharmacists better at checking drugs, or are technicians better at checking drugs? I can tell you I've seen some techs that are better and some pharmacists that are better, but they're all humans. Is anybody better than a barcode scanner and more efficient and effective than a barcode scanner about identifying the right drug before it actually goes into a patient? The answer is no. So we look for ways to take the human factors out of this. And I think as you think about tech to pharmacist ratios, it is important what kind of automation and safeguards are in place that are used that take human factors out of it, because that really does allow what I would call, you can trust less supervision more if you have this technology in place and it's consistently used to protect patients. So I've got a couple pictures here, and I want to go into some more depth about that. But it's really important to think about those high level concepts as we move forward here with our discussion. So if we go to the next slide, I summed up some of the things here that have already been mentioned, but I just want to highlight some of them. Obviously, you know a lot about sterile compounding on this committee. You've been dealing with that for years. And it is super important, and it's amazingly complicated. And it's also an area where you have to have a tremendous amount of training. And if I was ever thinking about, quote, an advanced practice technician, I would think about somebody really certified at a very high level in sterile compounding. And if you had that, could you actually have those technicians be the end inspection for a finished product? I think you probably could, So those are concepts to think about, but sterile compounding is amazing. And we have that obviously in all of our hospitals. About 90% of our drugs plus, could be 95, come out of our automated dispensing machines. At KP, we use Pyxis is our vendor. Those things are so important if you just think about it. In the old days, physician would write an order, would come to the pharmacy, we would dispense it from the pharmacy, it would get delivered to the floor to a nurse to then administer to a patient. That first dose process could take 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours in large hospitals. Now, all of our drugs actually sit on the patient care unit. I mean, they are there for the nurse to actually grab and give. The important thing is the controls you put around those automated dispensing machines. Pharmacists need to verify every order before a nurse can actually administer it, but the delivery time is actually 0. So you think about how important that is and how that has improved patient care and patient safety across our hospitals. It's pretty amazing. And managing those things is like managing a fine quarter horse at the Kentucky Derby. It is really complicated. You want to have just the right stuff in there, not too much, not too little. And you want to just manage that in exactly the right way. What can be taken out on emergency override, what can't be. So those are things to think about. Barcoding and RFID technologies have revolutionized our business. And we have implemented barcoding in just about every place that we can. So we've done it in the IV room. Before we compound something, we barcode scan every product to make sure it's the right product before we compound it. Medications that go out of the pharmacy to the floor, pills, tablets, capsules, get barcode scanned before they leave to make sure it's the right thing. They get barcode scanned before they get put in the automated dispensing machines to make sure we put it in the right pocket so that it doesn't set up the nurse for an error when they remove it. We use RFID technology to track medications in emergency drug trays. We use it to track drugs in anesthesia, to make sure that it's the right drugs, to make sure track expiration dates and everything. And since I have a lot of gray hair on my head, over the many, many years that I've been in the hospital business, this has revolutionized safety. When we put barcode medication administration, both for pharmacy and also for nursing, right before they administer the med, they scan the barcode. It has decreased the reported medication error rate in our hospitals by 50%, 50. That is the biggest safety thing that is, in addition to the electronic medical record, that ever happened in my career. Obviously, those two things have been life-changing as far as patient safety and public safety. So that's huge. Drug purchasing is incredibly important. COVID pointed that out to everybody, the importance of having expert technicians in the purchasing process. That's going to become even more important with the Drug Chain Security Act, which will go to full effect later this year. So that's very complicated. And the other thing is, I think what was mentioned in passing was around drug shortages. We deal with drug shortages literally every day in the hospital. And these are critical drugs for patients. And technicians are experts at that. In many ways, they are the pointy end of the spear. When we have, communication channels between technicians, when we start to see that several hospitals say, hey, I'm not able to get this today, it's short, it sets off the alarm bells in our whole drug supply chain to start proactively looking and preventing those things from happening. And then we have used Tech, according to the California law. And that's really important, as I say, to offload as much as we can from the pharmacy folks. And our technicians are great at maintaining a lot of other things. You know, we have very sophisticated temperature monitoring systems in all of our areas. And I think we're getting more involved. Yes, automated dispensing machines, I'll talk a little bit more about expanded tech duties. With automated dispensing machines, yes, it keeps track of narcotics very closely. And it looks for discrepancies and counts that are off and all that. And that we've been doing that forever. But now we have more sophisticated software, and we're going to get technicians more involved in helping with that as well. But needless to say, technicians are the backbone of the distribution system, really the leveraging point of how we can maximize the benefit of our pharmacist brain power to help our patients. And then we want to maximize automation for safety and to take human factors out of the process. So that's kind of it in a large nutshell, just so that you kind of know our philosophy. So next slide, please. This goes along with some of these things I talked about. So I put here a barcode scanner, again, revolutionary for patient safety. Down in the left there, you see that KitCheck oven. We call it the oven. It's an RFID scanner. You put an emergency drug tray in there, and it will tell you what's in there, that to make sure you have everything in there, and also the expiration dates of everything in there. The last thing you want to have happen on a code blue in a hospital is to open up the emergency drug tray and not have an essential medication there. So this is hugely important when you talk about patient safety and controlling drugs. In the middle there is a high resolution camera. We have those in our IV hoods. This is a special camera made for IV hoods. We take pictures in high-risk products like oncology products at critical points during the compounding process. So the technicians will take a picture of the bag that the oncology drug is going to be shot into. They will take a picture of the vial that's going in there. They will take a picture of the syringe, and the high-level camera, high-definition camera will tell you exactly how many mLs, to the tenths that is being injected into the bag before it's injected. These pictures are all embedded into our electronic medical record. This is called the dispense prep check functionality inside our electronic medical record provider, which is called Epic. And these are really important things, not only for patient safety. And when a pharmacist checks the product, you can imagine the detail that they have available then to check that. And then the second thing is, if you ever have to go backwards and find out if something went wrong, what happened. This is super important technology that we use. So this is a lot of the things that I wanted to mention to you about and show you some of this technology and how important it is to maximize patient safety, public safety in your terminology, and really how the technicians are the backbone of that. And this is why we do it this way. Next slide. And I really wanted to also then, this takes an immense amount of training. If you saw, our sterile compounding policy is probably 35 pages long, and our standard operating procedure is probably 50 pages long. And we have to train, and I put a little hand hygiene section down there for you. But we have extensive technician training, IV sterile compounding, on all this automation, how to run automated dispensing machines, how to maintain these emergency supplies, and tech, as we've talked about, and all of that. We do have a technician career ladder. In fact, we have technicians that become exempt managers and actually manage other pharmacy technicians in the inpatient space. So it's difficult to find great techs. It's difficult to train them and hang on to them. We've talked about a lot of the challenges. You have to give them a career ladder and the ability to get, to manager level, et cetera. So it's super important. We highly value our techs. We form alliances with technician training schools to make sure we have a pipeline. We go out and recruit techs. That being said, like sterile compounding, it is a high risk and high intensity area, and they're, it's hard to hang on to people. They're very valuable commodities who are really great at this. And then lastly, I'll just touch on a few things. Next slide, please, on some sort of expanded things and where we're going, and similar to other things. We have really, so, we're a bit unique, right? In the sense that most of our patients really reside within our system. So they are in our hospitals. They are our health plan. And when they get discharged, we're still responsible for them no matter where they are. And most of them fill all their prescriptions at our pharmacies. Our outpatient pharmacies fill across our program about 105 to 110 million prescriptions a year. So it's quite a staggering number. What that helps us though with is, compared to many other organizations, we really have a really complete picture of the patient in our electronic medical record. I really have a great med list when that patient comes in. And I know what they got in the hospital, and then I can really work on what they need to go out on. So we spend a lot of time on transitions of care and medication reconciliation. We do a lot of that with pharmacists, but what we're looking to do is expand that more to technicians to assist us with that. And I think Cedars did a great job talking about that, and Stanford as well, and going with that. So we see that. Compounding robotics, it's not where I would love to see it be right now. And we've been hoping for great compounding robotics for a long time. For us, it just hasn't worked out exactly the way we would like it to yet, but it probably will in the future. I mean, that's a whole nother subset of sterile compounding. And I mean, the technicians that run those robots, you really have to be expert in that. So we definitely see that expanding. And then I think what also was brought up with drug diversion prevention and data analysis. One of the things that pharmacists hate to do, well, actually all health professionals hate to do, is be the policeman, because that's really not what we went to school for, and that really wasn't one of the jobs that we really thought we were signing up for. But we are involved in that, right? As I always say, humans have been abusing opioids for 5,000 years at least. That's never going to change. So, so we really have to watch the stuff, and we do. And we have a lot of systems in place. And yes, we have the automated dispensing machines. We have another product called C2 Safe that's inside the main pharmacy that prevents everything from the time it comes in the door at the pharmacy until the time that it goes into the patient. Now, we also have some other sophisticated software that we have now that looks both on a daily basis at every single controlled substance transaction. I'm talking about what was reordered versus what was removed from Pyxis, versus what was administered to the patient, versus what was documented as wasted, if there was any waste. And that all has to reconcile, or it pops out as a variance. Second, in addition to that, that software also looks longitudinally at every single person that uses controlled substances in the hospital, how they order them, who's the witness if they do waste. And it looks at these things, and it uses AI to do longitudinal monitoring of, situations where it looks like somebody has a different practice than other folks do, that we want to look more closely to see if there's any problems there. Well, what's the idea with this? Well, of course, it's if we have someone who has a diversion problem, and an addiction problem, the sooner you catch that, the better, both for them, but also to protect patients. Because you've seen a lot of these horrendonoma stories where, people were diverting drugs and contaminating vials, and patients got hepatitis C and all these things. So the earlier you can get this stuff, the earlier you can intervene, the better. So we have a lot of this. There's a lot of room in here for technicians to be very valuable in looking at all this and analyzing the data and helping to manage all of this. And so we're looking at that. In our case, in kind of a centralized fashion, if you think about it, we could have them look at this data across our 37 hospitals in California and intervene and look at these things. So I give you some of those potential activities. But I just sum it up by saying a lot of the things. Technicians are just key and critical for us. We see them continue to expand their valuable roles. It only makes it better for pharmacists to allow pharmacists to practice at the top of their license. And it only makes it better for patients to protect public safety and to optimize the outcome of medication therapy. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan, for an awesome presentation as well. I was lucky to tour one of your hospitals, and it was a really pleasure and to see so many of your dedicated staff. And again, thank you for coming to present today. Members, do we have any questions or comments for Dr. O'Brien? Satinder, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Bryan. Thank you, Dr. O, for coming in for excellent presentation. I just wanted to it's kind of question that I've been asking all day, but similar to that, want to get a perspective from your experience with the Kaiser. You talked about that how automation, for example, not necessarily always make it faster or efficient. Sometimes it can slow us down, as one of the presenters pointed out earlier, the Drug Supply Chain Safety Act, DSCCA, some of the scanning slows down the process. But on the other hand, things like barcode scanning reduces the errors, and patient safety is really critical. And you talked about how tech program on your watch has help patients expand their scope of pharmacists expand their scope of practice. And having seen all those, one of the concerns we get as a board members sometimes is that it reduces the number of jobs for pharmacists, or reduces the jobs for technicians. In your experience, what are your experiences been in terms of, has there reduced jobs or increased jobs? If yes or no, how can you elaborate on that? How does it, if it didn't, what kind of jobs got created with this, or got, to keep?
Yeah, no, really good point. So, in our system, what everybody has discovered is the power of the pharmacist in getting outcomes. We constantly are deluged from our physician and nursing partners to do more and more and more. And so, if anything, they want us to take over more things, because pharmacists are amazingly successful at getting outcomes from drug therapy. So they want us to add more people to do antimicrobial stewardship. They want us to add more people to manage more drug therapy. We really can't do that unless we leverage the technicians the way that we are, because we don't have an unlimited budget, as I think Dr. Shane said. You're always balancing that. So no, we haven't lost any jobs with these expanded activities. In fact, it's allowed pharmacists to contribute more as a full member of the patient care team. And, versus being sort of what you would say stuck on some of the distribution activity. It allows us to do more patient rounds. It allows us to do more programs. And so I haven't seen that. And what I would say around the technician jobs, I think it was really described earlier, all of these unique roles that have developed for technicians. And I sort of mentioned around, drug histories, we talked about that, but also, diversion monitoring programs, analytics related to we have centralized buying departments at Kaiser for drugs. A lot of the people in those departments are pharmacy technicians who evolved from working in hospitals to working in this centralized job to make sure that we don't have drug shortages, and sourcing things from our wholesalers and various manufacturers. So we just keep expanding. It's not a zero-sum game. The pie keeps growing. And so I don't worry about that at all. In fact, from your perspective, it's going to be a real challenge to talk about ratios, because there's the ratios maybe inside the hospital related to drug distribution, but all of these other unique roles, I'm not even sure there needs to be a ratio. If I have 6 technicians centralized purchasing drugs and preventing drug shortages, do I have to have a pharmacist 1-to-2 ratio or 4-to-1 or what? I don't think so. So I think that's a challenge as you think about it from your perspective, but hopefully I answered your question.
No, you did. Thank you very much. That was very insightful, and appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you, Satinder. Members, do we have any other comments, questions for Dr. O'Brien? Give a little bit of pause there. I don't see anyone jumping to unmute. So thank you so much, Dr. O'Brien. We are a public agency, so we are going to go for public comment really quick. So If we could open up the microphone for WebEx moderator Ann.
Certainly, this is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the presentation, you may look for the hand icon, typically at the bottom of the WebEx screen, or if you're on a mobile device, it may be behind the 3-dot other options. And if you're a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We ask people to speak for no more than 3 minutes. We'll give you a 10-second warning. Are there any comments on the presentation? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator Ann. Thank you so much, Dr. O'Brien. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your flexibility and for your time. I know how busy you are, so thank you. And I hope you can stay if you can, but I understand if you have to go for our next discussion. But
Thanks
thank
for
you
the
so much.
opportunity. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I found all these presentations today extremely enlightening. I am curious if any members have any thoughts on some possible changes to the board's regulation to further empower pharmacy technicians to support pharmacists in the hospital setting. If we believe it is appropriate, we can reflect on what we learned today and consider some feedback from the full board next week before we determine next steps. I believe we can expand some technician duties via regulation as the legislation allows more flexibility in an inpatient setting for the board to develop regulations possibly. Please correct me and or Corinne if that's not correct. But if not, right now, please provide any suggestions and food for thought for us to continue this discussion as well. I know a lot is already allowed, but we're looking for something more innovative as well that will help pharmacists to focus on their what they do best is really to provide those clinical services and knowledge and to really be a clinician, right? So any suggestions are great here. If not, we can talk about more and in the subsequent meetings. So anyone would like to say anything, please go ahead. I'm hoping Renee will have something to say, but not to put you on the spot, Renee. But I will open it up for member comments. Go ahead, Renee.
You did put me on the spot. Just kidding. I was just gonna wait. Yeah, it's a really fantastic presentations, and I think, clearly we're seeing what technicians are doing now, right? So I do think we need to address some of the limitations that are in the regulations. And again, so I'm going to say for institutional settings. So I recognize that. Again, I think sometimes we just really have to divide and conquer a little bit here, right? The role in hospitals, and then when you expand to larger academic, high acuity hospitals, larger hospitals, like you start layering that on, you're going to see technicians in roles as has been described in all of this. So it definitely needs some consideration. I think it's always a challenge. I know even in my setting, considering the ratios when, my hospital is very similar to most of these in that, our buyers are technician, we have, technicians. Anyway, I could go on, but in many of these settings, we also have technicians who are in those roles. And and again, as in many of these, we also have lots of pharmacists, but the oversight model is a little different in that sometimes the oversight of specialized technicians is by sometimes a specialized pharmacist or a manager because they're doing some other functions that are some of them not necessarily directly related to getting a dose to a patient when it's needed. They're doing some overarching report like 340B, investigational drugs, sterile compounding training, sterile compounding compliance. So They, you know, for instance, I'm serial compounding pharmacist, and I have some compliance technicians that I work with, and a lead technician I work with, and you know they're getting it done, right, with oversight, myself as well as a couple other pharmacists, because it's a large program. But anyways, all that to say that I think we really need to look at how we can word, you know, this. I mean, I'm not familiar with it, so I'd have to find out more, but Mark Johnston's suggestion to look into the tech delegation model. Anyway, I don't, you know, I looked at it briefly. I don't know that much, but you know, that could be a way to go where it's, again, thinking more general, just like how we have, you know, a standard of care model coming for pharmacists, a similar type of thought process for technicians. I mean, clearly, you know, not the exact wording for standard of care for pharmacists is about clinical judgment, corresponding responsibility, but I think there can be an analogous level for technicians as an allowance under, of course, I mean, you know, it's a caveat, so always under a pharmacist, right? These are pharmacy directed programs, positions, and then the technicians operating within that, almost like a collaborative practice, right? And things are verified, audited, and reviewed by pharmacists. So some type of picture like that. So I'm not even going to throw out any kind of numbers or anything. I know that's our next discussion, but I do think some kind of broader, for the institution setting, broader allowance.
Thank you, Renee. Satinder, Claudia, Trevor. Sorry, it's just the order of you all on my screen. So any comments? We are ready to move on if you don't have any other comments.
I'm sorry. I have just a small, brief comment. A lot of it was said by Renee. I just want to emphasize, it came pretty clear to me that from all the speakers that expanding what tech can do really frees up the pharmacists to do other tasks, you know, allows them to expand their scope of practice as well. So having said that, you know, it's also came clear to me that, you know, we need to, you know, maybe we can do something around building safeguards in regulations, so that you know, like some sort of like certification programs. Like, it looks to me like some of the institutions are already doing that. Maybe the regulation just needs to be that as long as the institutions have it in their policies and procedures, and they have the training program, the certification program, it could be, you know, blessed. And the ratio, like it came through, I think all the speakers talked about, it depends on what task they're doing. Some of them, it doesn't make any sense. On the other more clinical tasks, it may require that. And we can either create some sort of safeguards in regulations, or we could also leave that in as a regulation allows the flexibility for individual practice settings, because they vary from site to site, you know, depending on how large places, how much automation they have, what kind of trainings they have, and so on. So that's just my few cents.
Thank you, Satinder. Renee?
I just want to say, kind of for some clarity of kind of what maybe was somewhat unspoken in all of this, when we talk about, you know, we're expanding, you know, the pharmacist role, working on the top of their license. It is true, so many services, everybody wants a pharmacist to round with them, to develop something. And so that seems to be ever expanding. There also is a role, so when we talk about, like, are we taking pharmacist jobs, that there are pharmacists who are not necessarily going the clinical route, but they're very operational focused. And those are who are sometimes more managing and overseeing the technology, and maybe are, you know, like we have actually a role like advanced clinical, not the light. I mean, we do have some advanced practice pharmacist license, but the role for clinical pharmacists, advanced clinical pharmacists, but we also have some advanced operational pharmacists. And so they are responsible for, like the ADC, or we call it AUDS, and controlled substances. And that is who's managing technicians who have roles for compliance in that area. So there is an expanding role for operational pharmacists and very technology, Kit Check mentioned here. It is a glorious technology. The accuracy is way better than anybody. It's a whole management in and of itself because of the trays and working with the ORs and that. So I just want to say that there is this other route, yes, which allows pharmacists to operate at a higher level on the operational side as well, not just clinical. So just throwing that in there too.
Thank you, Renee.
Mhm.
Thanks, everyone. This has been a great presentation. Hope you all enjoyed. I really wanted to kind of start here for our discussion with some presentation from very esteemed health systems, not just for there's many out there. So I really appreciate everybody for their time and always working so hard to, putting the patient's care at the top of your priority. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are ready to move on to the agenda item 5. This will be our last item for today. Agenda item 5, discussion and consideration of pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio in the inpatient setting. As members of this committee recall, in 2024, the board released a survey related to the pharmacist to technician ratio, pharmacy technician ratio. The results were discussed during the July 2024 licensing committee meeting. The results differentiated the data between the institutional and non-institutional settings. Because the ratio in the non-institutional setting is set in the statute, the board prioritized its assessment of the ratio in that setting to meet timing of the sunset review process. Today, we begin our review of the ratio for the institutional setting established in the board's regulation. The pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio is a critical component in ensuring both operational efficiency and patient safety within hospital and healthcare systems. The board's regulations have established a fixed ratio. However, I believe it is appropriate to consider if changes or greater flexibility, particularly in acute care or in high volume hospital settings, is appropriate. Advancements in technology, evolving practice models, and greater technician training that we discussed under the prior agenda item also help to provide context for our discussion today. With consumer protection being our guiding light, any changes to the current ratio structure must carefully balance the need for operational adaptability with our fundamental responsibility to protect the health and welfare of California consumers. I note that the board sunset bill proposes at this time, the way that it's drafted, allow for increase in the pharmacist to pharmacy technician ratio of up to 1 to 4, with the actual ratio for a specific pharmacy being established by the PIC. When I review the data in attachment 2, I think the model suggested in the legislation may be an appropriate model for us to consider in institutional setting as well. Members, I welcome your thoughts and your comments. And we can also open up for public comment, but I know a lot of presenters did leave, but I'm hoping there are still some public comment who can provide some context or some suggestions, but we can also go with you all too. Members, any comments? Any thoughts? Trevor?
Yeah, just and I'm obviously interested in public comment as well. But it seems to me, a song that I'm also in line with you, about there needs to be additional flexibility of some sort, in figuring out how we can both create that flexibility by allowing for a higher ratio while also making sure that the PIC is in the end is the one that has the ability to decide whether or not this is too much, too little. I think this is I don't believe in the zero-sum game of, you know, just from going from 1 to 2 to 1 to 6, or like where we're mandating certain things. I think there's a way for us to advocate for both the additional flexibility that is needed in so many of these different scenarios, because one size does not fit all, even in these particular sectors, like retail and whatnot, and making sure that, you know, we've seen in the workforce that, you know, commercial private entities really working their pharmacists to the bone and really trying to squeeze as much money out of their pharmacies as possible without regard to the workers. And we need to make sure that as we're considering these items, that we are making sure we're providing flexibility for the pharmacists in charge to make sure that they have the resources necessary to protect their patients and serve their patients well, not just to you know, make something necessarily more cost efficient. Like efficiency is great, but again, our mandate is for the consumers, and I think by creating this middle ground of enabling a greater ratio and allowing it to be at the discretion of the PIC to make sure that these workplaces remain safe, which in turn creates safety for consumers, is where my mind is at.
Thank you, Trevor. Any other member comments? Claudia, go ahead.
Yes, I think Trevor, you bring up a good point in terms of, you know, not setting boundaries in terms of like what people can and cannot do based on needs. I think what came to mind is if there was a way for them to petition to increase the ratio based on their needs. I think for me, you know, the presentation was pretty informative. It was shocking too to hear that Kaiser is doing between 105 and 110 prescriptions a year. You know, so does the board have a sense of the level of operational efficiencies that need to take place for places of this caliber versus smaller ones? And if we know that, how do we become flexible to adapt to their needs if petitioned?
Thank you, Claudia. Great comment. And just for historical purposes, you know, that's a great comment. And we did have a really deep dive discussion on this topic through our licensing committee. And that was one of the areas that I was kind of talked about, you know, about a year ago. And I think the petitioning process is an idea I had myself actually, but through our discussion, we kind of came to a conclusion that, you know, there are, you know, we are just a vast state. And I think that that process, I think we kind of came to a conclusion that that is just unrealistic. So I think that's where we landed here, is to more allow flexibility for the PIC and not necessarily that it needs the board to approve, like us to approve. But it's more of a PIC driven process where, you know, operational efficiencies and, you know, understanding their challenges and their strength, that they can kind of decide. And that's kind of the direction that our sunset bill landed, as well as I think that our discussion today is kind of, you know, probably going to focus on. But I mean, that's exactly a great point that you're bringing up about the petition process. And, you know, that was definitely something that we discuss and we can continue to look into. I have Renee, then I'll go to you, Satinder. Renee.
I just wanted to add a thought of possibly considering, I mean, much like in the discussion of standard of care, where there are some, you know, some sort of more task, non-clinical versus clinical, where following regulations. So the example, of course, is always compounding, right? There's some there are some standard of care elements in sterile compounding, but overall, it's a very scripted a lot of scripted requirements out of the USP document, and some that were added, of course, and that's in process. But maybe a similar thought in that, I mean, I still would like to consider not having a set ratio, but some wording that would distinguish between, as was mentioned, Dr. Shane, about, like the med use process. So, so the very, the very hands-on preparation of meds, and knowing that there needs to be a pharmacist who's checking meds that are going out to be distributed into the AUDSs or the compounding, doses or that type of thing, versus other non-med use process activities. So, like that's a little bit how I'm thinking of that, to look at those two and how we could possibly have wording in that respect, but could be not set, but determined by the PIC. Anyway, I just want to make the distinction between those two things. I mean, in my experience in a pediatric setting, we have a very high number of daily doses, because we're doing almost all doses by hand, right? So, lots of sterile compounded doses, oral compounded doses, half tablets, pre-packed small amounts of drug, right? So there's a lot of pharmacist checking going on. We currently don't do tech due to the high variability of the doses and the impact of a med error. So anyway, so we don't do that. But again, I know lots of other places do, and I'm not opposed. We just have not gone there in pediatrics. I think that's a different conversation. But there's still a lot of pharmacists' involvement in those med use activities. So a ratio would be, we'd have to discuss that.
Thank you, Renee. Satinder, and then Claudia, back to you. I think your hand is raised.
So I think this idea of 1 to 2 an institutional setting seems to me very rigid. I think we can increase it with the ACE, PIC is definitely, should be involved in it all, because they're ultimately responsible. I think they should be consulted. But I think also could be some sort of guidelines in terms of the what kind of a tools or the facility has, like the training that they provided to the team members, or the automation they have. I think that could be, maybe with that I don't know if that needs to be in a regulation, or we could be mentioned that as long as the facilities have that kind of guardrails in place, could be another way of doing it. So I'm in favor of providing more flexibility to these facilities, and also our pharmacists, and to allow to do the job they need to do. So that's kind of where I'm thinking.
Thank you, Satinder. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's probably a room for discussion there. And Claudia?
Can you just verify for me right now, where do we stand in terms of the ratio, just so I can have that clear?
Sure, yeah. So inpatient setting is right now at 1 pharmacist to 2 technicians. And for outpatient setting is at 1 pharmacist to 1 technician, and the additional pharmacist, so 2 pharmacists would allow you to have 2 more. So then after that, it goes up by that ratio. So 2 to 3. So 1 to 1 to 2 to 3. It hasn't been changed in California for the outpatient setting, or I guess non-institutional setting, for about the last, 40 some years, and this was the first. I think we are finally cracking that. So all of us involved is involved in some history making last year. So, and we'll see. I mean, that actually sunset bill is still in the legislative process. So We don't know where it's going to end up, but that's what we propose on the non-institutional setting, and non-institutional setting equals like an outpatient setting, outside of hospital, right? So those settings we propose is 1 to 2. But as I stated in the earlier comment during the opening, currently drafted legislation, it would allow you to do 1 to 4. But at the pharmacist in charge would set the ratio. So it kind of flipped right now. That's why now this discussion is coming up, because we had 1-to-1 in community setting. In general, I call it a community setting. Should probably say non-institutional setting. And that was 1-to-1. And then the institutional setting was allowed to set by the ratio through a regulation. So it's been at 1 to 2 for also a long time. But now that it's kind of, because legislation can just change, but the regulation you can't just change like that, right? So it's just a long process of regulatory development. And so that's why we're starting this discussion. But I think that I will boldly say that if as the legislation gets adopted, I think that that there's got to be some timely discussion on how we move forward in the institutional settings of ratio to make sure that it all makes sense. Hope
And
that makes sense, Claudia.
yeah, that makes sense. And just to follow up, I mean, based on the numbers, and then I'm new to the board, so I'm just picking up information here as I go along to make a sound judgment here. But based on the number of current licensed pharmacists and technicians, what ratio do we have there if everything was to be divided equally? Do we know that?
Like how many licensed pharmacists are in the state of California, and then licensed pharmacy technicians in the state of California?
Yes. What's the ratio there?
So
Yeah.
we actually provide that at the every licensing committee meeting, and at the end of the PDF that there is a total number of licenses for each licenses we license. It's at actually the conveniently licensed last page of page 49 in the PDF. And if you look at that number as of the end of quarter, I believe we have 50,000 or so pharmacists and about 65,000 pharmacy technicians. So the number wise, yes, that's it's not like it's not possible, but in reality, I think a lot of pharmacy technicians, you can almost be certain that they are actually in California. But pharmacist, that 50,000 not necessarily means they're like a licensed pharmacist and residing, practicing in California. So you probably don't want to look at that as like, oh, there's not even a pharmacy technician who can match that ratio, and that therefore we should not contemplate it. Because if you look at it that way, it's not always the case, because a lot of pharmacists are licensed in California who do not practice in California. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that helps for sure. I think that helps the public to understand our way of thinking.
Yeah. But there's a lot of discussion to come on this. This is a very preliminary discussion, so we have a lot more to discuss on this topic.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
I think that for now, what I am thinking is to probably look at more of maybe a regulatory language that is more focusing on, is there a specific number, one? And I think my thinking is there may be a number, but it's not the number is what we set. It's that there can be a number, but that should be set by the PIC, right? And maybe some consideration of a practice model that should be in their policies to set the number to a certain number. And I think that in consideration of what activities would a ratio be relevant to clarify that. So that's kind of a 3 layers of what I'm seeing. So I'm hoping that that's a consensus we have here at this meeting, at least, so that we can kind of start maybe some language development. So I see some thumbs up. Sounds good. I am opening for public comment. If that's ready to go, moderator in. I know time is running out, so I need to move on that. Moderator in.
Yes, if anyone would like to make a comment on the issue, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. We do have a request for comment, first from Chasney Johnson. As a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning. I'm sending you your request to unmute.
Hello, Chasney Johnson here. Thank you again for the second opportunity to speak today. Pharmacy technician number 106559. I think the tech ratio to pharmacists is good as it is. I think this gives us an opportunity to show the skills of the people that are qualified to be hired and working at the hours that is set. We do have time to answer phones, help patients, whether they're at the counter or taking medications to the floor. I think this gives an opportunity for all skills to be shown, no matter how fast-paced or time management is involved. And I think that the ratio is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comment.
And our next request is from Rita Shane. And Rita, again, I will give you the reminder that you have 3 minutes with a 10-second warning.
Okay, you can hear me now. So
Yes.
first of all, this was extremely informative. I did stay on the whole time just because I enjoyed listening to kind of some of the similarities across our institutions, and I appreciate President O's kind of summarizing of what this might look like. I think the ability to increase the number of technicians in our organizations to leverage pharmacists is going to continue to be important going forward. We've got huge economic headwinds. Adding pharmacists is a big ticket item. We would all love to do it, but then we got to add on the salary and benefits, which is a significant number. To the extent that technicians can safely perform functions that you've heard today are developed with the knowledge, skills, and ongoing quality assurance that organizations have in place, directed by the PIC. I think we would offer individuals who may not choose to have or either have the opportunity to pursue pharmacy or not interested in pursuing profession of pharmacy, viable roles that would be respected within the organization, and I could foresee these roles continuing to advance. So appreciate the opportunity to be invited to contribute, and I really like the direction the board is going. Again, leading the country, and how do we advance practice? So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shane. I hope you continue to stay in touch with us in providing your always wonderful insights. Thank you.
And I do have a request for comment from Doug O'Brien. So Doug, again, I'll send you a request to unmute and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Again, I wanted to say thank you for inviting us and letting us present. But I thought your summary, Dr. O, was excellent. And it's a lot of information to compress into that short summary that you had. But I also like the path that you're going down, and want to thank the board for thinking about this and continuing to work this issue. So thank you.
Thank you for the comment, and thank you for coming again. I really appreciate it.
And I do not see any further raised hands. So shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator Ann. And before we go, any other lasting comments from our members?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a little bit more context to how I look at things. I live in the Mission. My local Walgreens is at 23rd in Mission. Very regularly, at any time of day, in this pharmacy, there's usually a line with about at minimum half-hour to 45-minute wait. In a predominantly Latino community where folks, the community that doesn't necessarily have as easy access to online tools for prescriptions at home, home delivery, all of these things. And so as I'm thinking about, expanding the ratio, I think very locally at my local pharmacy, and thinking about how these actions could potentially impact the communities across the state, but also here in a very vulnerable community as well. So I just wanted to kind of add that context into how I'm viewing this, not from a kind of a theoretical perspective, but from a very real lived experience in the communities that need it perspective.
Thank you, Trevor. And then Claudia?
Yeah, I really like what Trevor said. And I think just to add to that, I think the dynamics of the diversity within California have dramatically, changed. I know we've been growing as a state, so it would be good to also take into account how it is the state is moving forward in its standard of care, but also how it's addressing the needs of all these different communities. And it sounds to me that the pharmacist plays a really critical role, and the technicians are there to back them up and make sure the system works. So the operational part for me, I think, can be attached to what are the needs that we see coming forward if we look at the demand from the citizens of California.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you for your comments. And thank you for your contribution already so early. Your first meeting. Appreciate it. Shows you're a seasoned board member from a different board. So that is always appreciated.
Well, and just one
Thank
more
you.
thing, I really appreciate the presentation. So thank you for everybody that has been here with us today. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in person. So with that, I think we're ready for the adjournment. So as announced after the break, we are unfortunately skipping agenda items 6, 7, 8, 9 due to time constraints. So we'll discuss those on the next meeting. Agenda item 9 is for information and purposes, really. So that is out there for all of the public and for our members to see. And so with that, I would like to thank all of the presenters today, members, always for your time. Our next scheduled meeting is currently set for October 15th, 2025. Please monitor the board's website for updates. And last all, in just very short 1 week, hopefully in person for as many of you who is going to be in person, which is hopefully everybody. And so I look forward to seeing all of you in person next week in Sacramento, where it's going to be like probably 100,000 degrees. So I'll see you all in Sacramento. And to all the attendees, thank you so much for coming. And we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
And this is the moderator. We will stop the meeting. And the next meeting is going to start at 2 p.m. And that is the Public Education and Communication Committee. Thank you. And it will use the same link that this meeting had.